Go. Welcome to our regularly scheduled council meeting for September the 8th, 2025. My name is Kevin Burdock, and it's my pleasure to be Mayor of Oak Bay, and we have all of council joining us in chambers tonight. As we call the meeting to order, we'd just like to acknowledge that we gather on the traditional territories of the Coast and Strait Salish peoples, and specifically we recognize the Lekwungen people known today as the Songhees and Camosun or Esquimalt nations, and just that their connections to these lands and adjoining waters continues to this day. Up first, we have approval of the agenda. Can I have a mover and seconder? Move seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. I have 3 minutes for adoption. July 21st, 2 of them, and then July 28th. Moved, seconded. Are there any changes, corrections, or amendments to any of the minutes? Not seeing any. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. That carries. My remarks will be reasonably brief tonight. I do just want to acknowledge that we have done some fixes, attempted fixes, and some upgrades to our audiovisual equipment in this chamber. So we have a bit of a larger than usual contingent of staff, just trying to make sure that this all works. So hopefully it'll all go smoothly. Welcome back from summer. Council takes a break through August. But I do want to just acknowledge that through summer, our Parks, Recreation, and Culture staff in particular are really busy managing things like yoga in the park and music in the park and keeping our public spaces clean and safe for people. So I just want to acknowledge their work through the last couple of months. I also want to just remind people that this Wednesday is the last of the night markets on Oak Bay Avenue, so running from 4 to 8 p.m. If you have a chance, make sure you go down there and see the many vendors. Also tomorrow, that's this coming Wednesday, this Tuesday till tomorrow, people who may be interested, that the School District 61 is having an open house or an information session for feedback on the proposed new trustee electoral areas model for school district trustees. The consideration is changing from an at-large system where everybody in the region votes for 9 trustees to shifting it to almost like a ward system, though not called that, where each jurisdiction would essentially have a representative on the school board. And the proposed is that there'd be one from Esquimalt Nation, one from Songhees Nation, and one from View Island Highlands together, one from Oak Bay, one from Esquimalt, 2 from Saanich, and 2 from Victoria. So the numbers would stay the same, but a bit more directed. So if you're interested in that, there is an information session, again, that's at S.J. Willis tomorrow evening. Last, but certainly not least, just be aware that the municipality does have 2 surveys open right now for public input, one of which is just for amenities placemaking at Carnarvon. So that project is moving forward, and we're just seeking some fine-tuning of what it is that the community would like to see as we build that out. And there's also an opportunity for feedback on active transportation options along proposed corridors. And so we just encourage people to go and fill those out. They're both, like all of our public consultation, online, available at connect.oakbay.ca. There will be some in-person opportunities, open houses for the active transportation pieces as well. On to agenda business, and the first one is one of the more enjoyable ones I get to do. It's been a couple of years since you had a chance to do this one, which is the Allan Cassidy Recognition of Renovation and Building Achievement Awards. For those of you who don't know, the awards are named after former Oak Bay councillor and architect Allan Cassidy, who helped establish these awards in 2004. So we're just in the 21st year of these awards. When he passed away, they were renamed in his honor. The awards are intended to recognize notable new buildings and renovations that either have notable aesthetic or architectural appeal, that provide notable social benefit or impact, and or have notable environmentally sustainable design elements. We use a local artist, Lynn Gordon Findley, who is both an architect and a former member of the advisory design panel, to create a pen and ink sketch commissioned for the award winner. One of these is provided to the award recipients. But if you look around the room, you'll see examples of other award winners that hang on the walls, both in this chamber and throughout the building, that get rotated through. We are here actually doing the 2023 awards, so we're a little bit behind on these ones, but we have 2 winners tonight and 2 honorable mentions. I'm not sure if there's representatives from the honorable mentions here, but up first is 767, oh, that's right, sorry. Yep, sorry, I got it right. 767 Newport Avenue. Are there owners of that here tonight? Honorable mentions don't often come, but I'll just make mention of it. This is a renovation to an existing single-family home. It's really notable for its innovative use of materials and sustainable design integrated with its surroundings. And the other honorable mention was 2036 Oak Bay Avenue, which is the renovation of commercial building where Gardens Works is, just recognizing the exterior renovation to an existing commercial building that provided sustainable reuse of that building. So with that, I'm going to come around this way and speak to the winners. So these aren't really designed to be mobile microphones, but I'll try, just because other people at home otherwise can't hear what I'm saying. So this is a recognition for 636 Linkley's Avenue, which is a new single-family home. As I noted, owners are Melinda and Daniel Warren, and tonight we have Erica Sangster and Jackie, I don't have your last name, receiving or taking this this evening. So this recognition honors this home as an outstanding example of a newly constructed single-family residence, which the award selection panel and council recognized for its thoughtful integration into the site, use of innovative materials, and its successful design solutions. So with that, I'll hand this over, and I think we take a picture. Make sure I got the right one to the right recipients. There you go. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. And second is 2104 Windsor Road. We have Jane McTaggart and the architect Chris Foyd here tonight. And one other person. Mr. McTaggart. Oh, okay. Come on up, just watch your step on the ledge there. So it's really my pleasure to hand this award to Jane and Will, and the architect Chris Foyd. This is for 2104 Windsor Road. This recognition honors this house as an outstanding example of a newly constructed single-family residence, which the award selection panel and council recognized for its architectural innovation, effective use of space, and aesthetically pleasing design. And if you have a chance to just poke around the corner and look at it, it does nestle in very lovely. So let me hand this to you. So thank you very much for contributing to the fabric of our community. And for the great work.
Teamwork.
Your hand when you're holding that picture. There's no awkward way of walking around here.
You missed it.
No. So to the winners of the awards, yes, thank you. I just want to, I think all of us who living in Oak Bay really appreciate the sort of the varied fabric of the community and how it looks and feels. And so I really appreciate Allan Cassidy's thoughtfulness in starting these awards to sort of help recognize this, because it's often a work of love to make an extra effort. And so thank you for that. And by all means, all of the recipients are welcome to stay. But we're not going to be offended if you do leave. Recognize it's not always the most exciting thing to stay through a council meeting on a warm evening. Up next, we do have public input and question period. So there's actually a number of new faces in the room here, so I'll just explain briefly. We allow this time every meeting to allow members of the community. So this is speaking to items that aren't on the agenda, but are just of general interest to Oak Bay. You're welcome to come forward and talk to council about things that are of interest or related to district business. And but if you're here to speak to something that is on the agenda, then we ask that you just wait for that item to appear on the agenda, and we'll have opportunity for those items that allow public input to have that input. So with that, does anybody wish to come forward and speak to, please come forward. So this is a process you can demonstrate, and all we ask is that you just give your name, first and last name, and then just your municipality of residence. You don't have to give your exact address, and we have up to 3 minutes. You need to, and turn the microphone on, which is the center button. There you go.
Okay.
Name and municipality, and off you go.
I'm Jonathan Horlick. I'm a resident of Oak Bay.
Welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, councillors, staff members, members of the public. I'm here in my capacity as a director of the Uplands Neighborhood Association, the UNA, to preview in 3 minutes the UNA's soon-to-be submitted request to council for it to amend the Uplands regulation and the Uplands design guidelines to require 2 additional items of information to be included in an application for Uplands siting and design approval. The UNA board has contacted Oak Bay Planning and Building Department concerning the proposed amendment, and Mr. Boyle has advised, and I'm summarizing his communication as succinctly as I can, that the proposed amendment is a change to existing policy that would require council direction to implement. Hence, the UNA's approach to council directly tonight by way of preview and more formally in writing later this month. The UNA's objective. We are in proposing the amendment to provide the public, the advisory design panel, and council with information on how the form of registered title to a development site in the Uplands may change if the proposed application for Uplands siting and design approval is approved. The proposed amendment would require an application for Uplands siting and design approval to include information on the form of registered title to the development site at 2 points in time. Firstly, at the time the application is submitted, and secondly, assuming council approval upon implementation of the approval. This will clearly identify for the public, the advisory design panel, and council at the outset of the approval process whether the form of registered title to the development site in the Uplands will change from fee simple to some other form, such as bare land strata or building strata. It would not impose any additional cost or administrative burden on the applicant. The information requested by the amendment would be known by the applicant at the time of application for Upland siting and design approval. The UNA believes that the Oak Bay Special Powers Act gives council the jurisdiction to implement the proposed amendment. The proposed amendment requests relevant information concerning siting of a proposed development, and the UNA believes that the current process is deficient by not requiring the information the proposed amendment would require. We believe that proposed amendment is in the public interest and is easily implemented. And finally, we will be submitting a written request to council later this month. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Horlick. I was just going to remind you that your time was up, but you wrapped it up.
Tried
Thank
to
you very
squeeze
much.
it in, 3 minutes.
It's hard.
Thank
It
you.
feels very fast when you're sitting there, I know.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, and great demonstration of your name and address, or name and municipality, and being within the time. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak? Please come forward. Same process, exactly, just name and municipality, and then you have up to 3 minutes.
My name is Faith Collins, and I'm a longtime resident of Oak Bay. The Oak Bay municipality has on its website a list of its core values. One of them is Oak Bay is known for its attractive residential neighborhoods and strong sense of community. Another, the municipality is recognized for its historic architecture and community pride. Please preserve the unique character of the uplands arising from the Olmsted design and large lots. No infill housing. Honor the National Historic designation. Another, community engagement. The municipality values public involvement and community input in planning and development. Please listen to the residents of Uplands' concerns re high density and unaffordable homes. Another value, environmental stewardship. Oak Bay emphasizes sustainable development and environmental protection. The proposed development in Uplands will destroy a significant number of protected trees and fauna. These values reflect the community's commitment to quality of life, preservation of its heritage, and community well-being. Please hear the Uplands voices, concerns, and honor the municipal values. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Collins. Just want to remind people that there are some things we can take public input on and some things we can't. So appreciate you speaking in general terms to the values of the Uplands. We can't take input on land use items that don't allow for public input on them. So thank you for that. Is there any other people who wish to come forward? Same process. I saw you lift your hand to your ear, so I'll try and speak a little louder. The process, just name and then municipality of residence, and you have up to 3 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Norman Winston Whale. I've lived in the Uplands for more than 50 years, and it's been my pleasure to be there. It's been a residential park. It's been a historic site. Mayor and Council, you share a heavy responsibility. You must make difficult decisions. I want to suggest to you that you must make a decision, decide, are you going to serve developers? Or are you going to serve the residents of Oak Bay? I just make a concluding comment that this evening I drove by 3540 Beach Drive and 3560 Beach Drive. I just want one comment about that development. It's highly destructive. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Would anybody else like to speak to council this evening in our open portion? And I'm just looking online as well if anybody wishes to. Oh, there's a hand popped up. I see a Jordan Perot. If you just state your name and municipality of residence, we can start you in your time.
Yeah, good evening. My name is Jordan Perot. I'm the owner of Coming from the Construction Foundation of BC, and I'm a Saanich resident technically at this point. All our offices is in Langford, and we have another few offices around town. I know that this is, I've been sent here by someone else who's speaking on behalf of article number 12 on the agenda. I do have to go put my children down, so I thought I would speak now. This is the letter from the mayor of the mayor of Langford regarding a challenge to all municipalities in the Forge. So this is we're the organization that is responsible for this building. We're currently in the process of reclaiming what was previously it's essentially a biker's headquarters. And I wanted to highlight just the kind of the honor that it is to be able to create a space for community safety on behalf of tradespeople. This is something that we as an organization have been committed to for the last 10 years, starting first with youth programming and now being able to support tradespeople of all ages, particularly around mental health and addiction support for those seeking treatment as well. We're able to provide access to treatment centers. I know that it feels far away out in Langford. I think there's like 3 or 4 very large hills if you're on a bicycle, so it does not necessarily feel the most accessible, but one of the things we are able to do from that space is support tradespeople online, as well as create a space for community. So I appreciate just the chance for you to consider this request. We're really excited to be able to do something for there's 200,000 people in the province who are working in the trades. They are 3 times more likely to commit suicide than the rest of the average population. They're also about 4 times more likely to be affected by an overdose or a toxic drug poisoning. We know that there's tradespeople everywhere. These are our family members. These are our kids. These are our cousins. So there's not a single person that I meet who isn't somehow impacted by this issue. So appreciate your consideration, and I will try and make it back I'm going to go put my kids to bed. I will try to make it back if there are questions later, but I just wanted to say thank you for putting us on the agenda and taking this into consideration.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Perot, and I appreciate it. It's hard to find the right time to come back when it's at the tail end of the agenda and we don't know how long it's going to go. So no problem. I didn't mind you speaking to that just for that reason. I appreciate your being here. We don't usually take public input necessarily on correspondence, so we'll just, if you wish to come back, that's fine, but you don't have to. Whatever way, council gives direction this evening, I do want to just express appreciation to your efforts to raise the awareness in your industry and provide some supports for them. So thank you for taking on that challenge as well.
Much appreciated.
All right, take care. Back to this room. Is there anybody else who wishes to address council? There's always a wide selection of things that people wish to speak about at any one of these meetings, so. Okay, I don't see any other hands raised, so I'm going to end the general public comment and question period. The first few items on the agenda do not have public input. We are moving first to 7.1, our 2026 financial planning guidelines. We have with us this evening Ms. LaChance, our Director of Finance and Asset Management. I'll hand this over to you, Ms. LaChance.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I'm pleased to be presenting this report to kick off the 2026 financial planning process. This report is similar to reports brought forward to Council in previous years, presenting both the proposed financial planning timeline and the financial planning guidelines. Both have been refreshed for current economic conditions and uncertainties, as well as operational assumptions. The timeline has been revised to also advance allocation of the grant and aid budget by Council to earlier in the process alongside budget deliberations. As part of the process, this report is the opportunity for Council to confirm financial planning guidelines early in the process. Council will also have multiple opportunities to provide direction, beginning with the 2025 review of the 2022 to 2026 Council priorities later this fall. As in previous years, there will be multiple opportunities for public consultation and comment, where the public can engage directly throughout the process and directly during deliberations that are set to begin in late February 2026. The analysis and guidelines are outlined in the report, and staff are here to answer any questions. Staff recommendation is that the guidelines be approved by Council and that staff prepare the financial plan based on the attached timeline and as outlined in the report. Happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. LaChance. Are there questions? Go ahead, Councillor Smart.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. My first question is just with regards to the timeline, and I just wanted clarifications on the time frame in which our budget meetings will happen. I saw that there was a couple different comments about public consultation in late February, early March, and I just wanted to confirm, will the budget meetings occur prior to spring break to encourage public participation?
Ms. LaChance?
Through you, Your Worship. Yes, the planned start to deliberations will be at the end of February into early March, with estimated completion before spring break.
Thank you. Councillor Smart, anything else?
Thank you. I have just a follow-up to that question through you, Mayor. Is it possible this year to set the meeting dates in advance so that we can have those in our calendar early?
The chance? I think the answer is probably yes.
Yes, the answer is yes, through you, Your Worship.
Thank you.
And just one last question through you, Mayor. Just with regards to, and I really appreciated all of the information around affordability, because that we're hearing from the residents that is one of their biggest concerns right now, and so I really appreciate you having that context in this report. And I just wanted to check in about our next year's property tax increase. We talked about it last budget time as projected at 10.5%. And I just wanted to know, based on the report later in the meeting today, does that 10.5% not yet include the 0.84% for the potential loan authorization? So would we be looking, if we went forward with the loan authorization today, at an 11.34% projected property tax increase? Thank you.
Ms. LaChance?
Yes, thank you for that question. Through you, Your Worship. The forecast that you're referring to is part of the 2025 to 2029 financial plan that's been approved by council back in early April. That 10.5 is a forecast for the next year. And the report that you're referring to later in the agenda does relate directly to that approved financial plan. So that forecast was included.
Thank you. Other questions? I just have one quick question, and that is, I know you referenced this in your initial comments, but when are we looking at considering the grant request? You said that, concurrent with the budget process. Ms. Lachance, through me to you.
Yes, thank you for the question. So when we look back to last year, we had first approved the budget, 5 years, including a grant allocation amount for the applications that we receive before January 31st each year. We then later returned to council for the allocation to specific organizations. The intent this year would be still to set the budget, but to receive presentations as deliberations are underway, with the allocation at the end of once the budget's approved, have council allocate.
Thank you. I might just test the table here a little bit, maybe not with resolution, but just with this brief discussion, because I think there may be some value if we can, use the previous budget as a guiding thing, make approvals within that, and if we approve a larger budget, we may free up some money that we could add on to. But I just know last year when we went through this, there was a number of times by the time we got to the approval phase, we were already many of the events and things that were asked for funding had already passed, and so. But I also recognize this is coming right into the crunch of staff putting together all the budget information. So maybe I'll just leave it as a wish. If there's any way that we can move that up, I'm curious if I said looking around the table here, if there's interest in doing that, even with the preliminary budget amount, and getting that out of the way, then we can deal with that. I see nods around the table, so maybe I'll just leave that with you, Ms. LaChance, that if there's a way that we can maybe do it a bit earlier, I appreciate I don't want to commit you to anything tonight, just because I do appreciate that there's implications in terms of timelines of doing the budget and things, and people have jobs. Okay, thank you. So I'll just take that as a general guidance.
Move
Any
receipt.
other questions? No. To certainly take a motion to receive. Moved and seconded. You should discuss receipt. All those in favor? Opposed? None opposed.
And I'll move the staff recommendation.
This is for approval of the financial planning guidelines. Moved and seconded. Any other discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. That carries. Moving then to Section 8, Bylaws and Permits. This section, again, is not subject to public input. So up first, we have Upland Setting and Design for ADP 00194, 3300 Uplands Road. Mr. McStravick, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'll just say a few words to introduce this item. The district has received an application for an Uplands Siting and Design permit for the property located at 3300 Uplands Road to allow for changes to the window and door arrangement on the existing house there. The application was presented to the Advisory Design Panel for advice to Council on the 8th of July, and the ADP passed a motion recommending Council approve the proposed work. Staff review of the application also finds that the changes are supportable, in part because of the minor nature of the work and that it is being done in keeping with the existing architectural style of the home. I believe that the designer is here this evening. If there's any questions from Council, and I will leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Extravic. I'm getting a little dizzy from the new system here that zooms in on the speakers. With that, are there any questions? Not seeing any, so I can just get a motion to receive the report.
Receipt.
Moved, seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed.
And move the staff recommendation.
This is moving approval for the siting and design. Moved and
Yes.
seconded. Any discussion? Changes to windows and doors are not usually very controversial around here. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Thank you very much. Good luck with the project. Moving to 8.2, Upland Setting and Design. We have for 2830 and 2850 Lansdowne Road. We have Mr. McStravick back again. Slightly more complicated application.
Thank you, Your Worship. The district has received an application, again, for an upland siting and design permit for the properties located at 2830 and 2850 Lansdowne Road, to approve the design of 3 buildings on each of those 2 sites for 6 buildings in total. The proposed density of 3 units per lot is permitted in the R2 zone, and staff find that the proposal conforms to all aspects of the zoning regulations as applicable. The application, again, was presented to the Advisory Design Panel on the 8th of July, and the ADP passed a motion recommending council approval of the application with consideration for minimization of the visual impact of the garages. And on review of the application, staff also find that the proposed development conforms to the Uplands design guidelines and is therefore supportable in staff's opinion. The applicant and designer are both here tonight, should council have any questions for them. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. McStravick. I'm going to hand this over to council. Does anybody have questions for either the staff or the applicant? Go ahead, Councillor Braithwaite.
Thanks very much, Mayor. I think my first question will be, just to clarify, this is not a subdivision, but is there a possibility at all that the 6 lots that are being proposed now would be able to have 4plexes on each lot? So in the future, if they were subdivided, then there could be 24 units on this property rather than 6 that are being proposed.
Yeah, there is no subdivision application here, Mr. McStravick. Perhaps just a clarification of what subdivision actually would require as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. The councillor is correct that this application is not for subdivision. It's only to approve the proposed form and character of the 6 units that are being proposed and which are permitted under the existing zoning. As noted in the staff report, though, staff have heard from the applicant there's a possibility that they might come forward in the future with a separate zoning amendment application, the intent of which would be to reduce the minimum lot size to allow the 6 units to exist on their own lots there. And we haven't received that application yet. It's been discussed theoretically. But as for now, this is just about the design guidelines of applicability to the 6 houses.
So sorry, I think what I heard you say is that there's a possibility that it could come in the future for subdivision, and in that case, if that happens, then it would be 24. It could have a possibility of 24 units as opposed to 6 units, correct?
Mr. McStravick, I think it may be helpful as well to understand the process required for subdivision.
Yeah, so again, no application has been received. And so it's hard to comment, but I haven't heard anybody discuss a desire to build 4 units on each of the 6 lots that are being discussed, which don't exist yet. Today there are 2 lots, which are each allowed to have 4 units on them. So I don't think there's any realistic chance that we're looking at 24 units here.
Thank you. And then my other question was just in regards to the trees that are being removed or proposed to be removed. I believe that there's 48 out of 65 trees on that lot that are being proposed to be removed. Is there any way, did our arborist have a look at that and perhaps have any suggestions on how that might be lessened if this were to move forward?
Thank you, through your worship. Yes, as noted in the report, the current proposal would entail the removal of 48 trees on site, and staff, including park staff, were satisfied that by proposing to access these 6 units from one shared central drive aisle, that the best effort had been made to preserve as many trees as possible. There wasn't any realistic alternative solution that was floated to develop the same level of density, which again is permitted by the zoning bylaw. Our feeling is that the shared single driveway for all 6 units is a pretty reasonable approach. Thank you.
Thank you. And last question. It came from one of the letters that was sent in, and it talked about that the ADU has to be located on the same lot as the principal building, but in this particular case it would be because the principal building is on that one lot. But it says, it also asked, can you please confirm this, and can you confirm that as an ADU cannot be subsequently severed from its principal building and sold?
Mr. McStravick?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, it is the case that an ADU should exist on the same lot as the building that it is accessory to. again, if a future rezoning application came forward for this site, then it would be a different scenario. If they achieved a rezoning through council's approval and then subsequently subdivided these 2 lots into 6, then the 6 lots could each have a principal dwelling rather than an ADU. So,
Thank you for that clarification. Councillor Braithwaite, anything else? Councillor Smart?
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mayor, to staff. I just had a question with regards to the Uplands Design Guideline Parking and Driveways, where it suggests using narrow landscape driveways. And looking at the site plan, it does seem like a significantly wide driveway. And I'm just wondering if staff could comment on whether the width of that driveway came from the desire of the applicant, or was it requirements from staff? And I just wondered if we could hear a little bit more about meeting that design guideline about narrow landscape driveways. Thank you.
Mr. Mistravik?
thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, the design came from the applicants as is. We didn't provide any interim feedback on the width of the driveway and ask them to make it more or less narrow. I believe it was basically designed to be sufficient for two-way vehicle traffic, given that there are 6 units proposed to access from it. And so, you know, of course, the width of this is less than what we'd have if there was 3 or 6 individual driveways. But if perhaps the applicants could speak with more clarity as to how they arrived at this specific design. But to be clear, we didn't give them any specific feedback on that aspect of the proposal yet.
Generally, when we get questions about why, I like asking the applicant. So is the applicant here that could maybe speak to the, we're going to get into some of the design aspects here, so appreciate you coming forward. If you just state your name, municipality of residence, and then perhaps briefly just respond to the why of the driveway design as is.
Thank you. My name is Chris Floyd. I'm one of the applicants. I'm a developer and a resident of Oak Bay. A little conflict of interest, apparently. But as far as the layout of the site there, are we talking about the laneway or the individual garage entries?
I believe the laneway itself.
The laneway itself is a 6-meter wide laneway, which is the minimal width for two-way traffic into the and out of the development. We're planning on doing an asphalt driveway, and then the individual aprons in front of the garages, we're looking at using permeable pavers on those. And so the driveway itself is the laneway is the heavy traffic corridor, and it's been our experience with drain pavers that they don't work well in heavy traffic zones where there's more than serving more than a garage.
Thank you, Councillor Smart.
Thank you, through Mayor. Just to follow up on that then, so am I hearing that there maybe isn't an avenue potentially for exploring a shared driveway, like a Warner-style driveway? There's so many opportunities for cars to pull over along the way with the design. So I'm just wondering, I guess if there's some sense of leeway there from the applicant to consider more Warner-style driveway in keeping with the design guidelines, or if that's something that is very important, integral to the design. Thank you.
I've done many of these type of driveways, the Warner-style driveways there, and we have pull-offs, again, with drain pavers for parking on either side. 6 meters isn't a very wide laneway. It's minimal. And on the edge of these, we have a swale-style curb to collect the runoff from the road there. And we've got these pullouts that are basically also serve double duty as guest parking. And those have the green pavers on them. The type of driveway you're talking about is typically in a mixture of pavers and grasses and things like that. And there, I've seen all different styles, and I've actually done different styles of them where there are a lot of paving tracks with grass pavers between them, and we could look at that, but this is a narrow laneway serving 6 homes, and that was what we did. That's all we did.
Thank you, Councillor Smart.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, and I'll let you decide who the question will go to, but just one other design question. It was just with regards to the fencing and the design guideline around having a park-like environment and the 6-foot fencing. And I just wondered, and perhaps it's more of a question for staff, but do we have sort of enough teeth in the urban design guidelines to request lower fencing, or is there sort of an internal right to be able to build a 6-foot fence internally on a lot that we wouldn't really be able to insist upon reducing the height of fences in order to have a more park-like setting? Thank you.
Probably Mr. McStravick. It really comes down to regulations. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, on one of the pages of the designs, there's a sort of a fence schedule, and council will have noticed that all the fences are proposed to be a total of 6 feet, and that number falls within what is permitted within our bylaw. The most applicable guideline within the Uplands design guidelines that I'm aware of is one that says that fencing and walls should be used in a manner that promotes the open park-like concept of the Uplands. And if it was council's opinion that the current fence design didn't meet that intent, then I believe that would be a fair piece of feedback to give to the applicants and to ask them to revisit that aspect. If that was council's view that the guideline was not being met, there's I think 3 or 4 different fence typologies that are proposed with different levels of visual permeability, and so yeah, I think that's fair feedback in my opinion.
I might just give that to the applicant as well, of maybe just rationalization for the fencing that's proposed.
The fencing is quite open. We have portals on the 2 lots, on the lot on 2830 and 2850, the ones that are right on the sidewalk. They have their own type of a portal entryway we're suggesting doing in concrete and black aluminum wood horizontal planks, basically. The one thing that we are dealing with here is that because there are 3 homes on each of those lots, and they're on the north side of the street, the design of the homes are actually so that the flow out of the homes that are down on Lansdowne is such that it'll utilize the front yard as their main outdoor seating area. And of course, Lansdowne is a traffic street, and we just wanted to give a minimum of protection from that, or physical and visual separation from the 2, while maintaining the openness of the slats, which are 50% open, which is higher than the bylaws require for fencing. We will also then be doing a double layer of planting, low-level planting on either side of the fence to further develop that idea of separation of these people's yards from the street and the sidewalk. If there's many models on Lansdowne itself of fences that are 6 feet tall or taller with hedges that make it difficult to even see in the yard. Ours are quite open by contrast.
Thank you. Please continue, Councillor Smart.
Thank you. Just a quick follow-up through you, Mayor, to staff, just with regards to the permeable fencing down the line when those fences get replaced. Would that, in a sense, if they weren't replaced with down the line, would it have to come back for a revision to the design guidelines, or could somebody simply just decide, no, actually, I want a solid fence tomorrow, and I'm just going to do that?
Mr. McStravick.
Thank you, Your Worship. If somebody was just coming in wanting to build a new fence, that wouldn't typically be caught by our upland setting and design guidelines permit process, which is usually more closely associated with work that requires a building permit. So I think, for better or for worse, once this initial fence gets approved, then the horse is kind of out of the barn, and 10, 15, 20 years from now, when it's worn out, then the next fence probably wouldn't have to be approved by council.
Thank you. Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Mayor. This question is, I think, for staff. It may be for Mr. Soulier. I saw him online. It's a question about the tree canopy requirement, but I'll ask it, and whoever is ready to can answer it. The tree canopy requirement is set for this site. Off the top, I didn't actually write it down. It was at 35 or 40% coverage or something. One or the other anyway. But I wanted to know, when that number is set, what is the time frame over which an applicant would be expected to actually meet that, given that young trees planted will take variable amounts of time to reach their maturity and create that canopy.
Mr. Mashravik, do you know? If not, I'll hand it over to Mr. Soulier if he's available.
If Mr. Soulier is available, he can feel free to correct me. My understanding is that the canopy coverage numbers that are included within the tree protection bylaw are based on the expected size of a given species at maturity. There's a few different categories: small trees, large trees, medium trees, and that's all at maturity. So of course different species will take different amounts of time to reach maturity, and they could be planted at different stages of maturity as well.
Thank you. And I sort of follow up. And it's a question about what what takes precedence when you're considering this application. With respect to the zoning, the R2 zoning, up to 4 units are permitted as long as they meet the regulations, which in this case is 3 on each lot, and they do. Where does tree canopy requirement fit into that regulatory scheme? I ask because I look at the lot and I can see that in terms of the removals, because of the nature of what was there before, single-family residences at the more or less to the front of the lots, the tree canopy is quite well developed at the rear of the lots, and because of the units going in, that is going to be changed quite dramatically, I would say. So what comes first, the right to put in 4 units per lot if you meet the zoning, or the extent to which the tree canopy has to meet the requirements? I'm not very clear about that in terms of what takes precedence.
Mr. Mashravik?
Thank you, through your worship. The zoning will ultimately trump a tree protection bylaw, and so an owner is entitled to the density permitted by right in the zoning bylaw. In most cases, it is quite achievable to meet the canopy coverage targets, given the size of the lots we're talking about and the density at which some trees can be planted. So there's almost always room to achieve those targets. And in the rare case where it might not be possible, then I think we've entertained taking cash in lieu for replanting elsewhere, but I think we really try hard to avoid that.
Thank you. That's very clear. That's all I had.
Thank you. Any other questions for the applicant or to staff? Mr. Bull?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to add to Mr. McStagg's answer. In the Uplands area, because of the form and character review for new projects, that is something that council can consider. So even though at first glance the zoning bylaw allows for that density, this is a form and character review. So if there are concerns about tree loss, it is something that council could weigh into their consideration for any project. Thank you.
Thank you. Not seeing any other questions. I just had a couple questions for the applicant. Just on the face of it, there's some positive aspects of this approach of sort of taking a sort of holistic look at 1 or 2 lots and making it sort of a small, almost like a little village kind of model. I guess so. Part of that question I have for this is that but for me that means they're part of a single development, and I would be supportive of subdividing. So in that model where you're looking at these as lots, is there from initial view of it, it looks like all the buildings are pushed out to the edges of the lot to sort of maximize the green space or the space in the middle, pushed to the very, very back, pushed to the front. And I'm just wondering if there was consideration of sort of making this more sort of a cluster of buildings that sort of honored more of the green space as the park-like setting that we sort of typically think of in the Uplands when we're looking at some of these designs with more single-family homes. And so, over to you, Mr. Boyd.
The placement of the homes isn't actually pushed out to the periphery. The placement of the home is the result of the width of the laneway and an adequate parking atrium to make our guest parking counts in front of each of the garage doors. That's the defining edge of the homes. It was in our interest to keep the homes as far as possible away from the edges. We're overlaying setbacks for 3 homes. We could build 4, we chose 3 here. We're overlaying the setbacks, the front yard setbacks, the side yard setbacks. They're all conforming, and they're actually quite generous in Uplands. And so the houses aren't purposefully pushed out to the periphery. That was the result of having the lane down the middle. You could push them all towards the center there. You'd still have to meet the 4.6 meter side yard setback minimum in the middle there for the principal dwellings, which would have left a 9-meter chasm that could have been used for something else, but that would have meant putting laneways, 2 driveways, each 6 meters wide on the outside of the property. We have to maintain these, we have to, you know, there are setbacks for these homes that are obligatory and also work best for having somebody have a proper yard to live, to enjoy themselves in.
Okay, thank you. You know, we are looking at these as sort of individual, two lots, sort of, you know, the intention of this is not to have multiple individual buildings, it's sort of to look at these sort of holistically. So then can I just ask the logic of not having them, you know, because again, I think it was pointed out, a lot of the trees are being lost at the back of the building because we do allow for much more relaxed rear yard setbacks for accessory dwelling units. The primary intention of that is being for laneways. But in this case, it's pushed, again, fairly far back on the lot. Was there consideration of moving the buildings closer together from the back to the front?
The zoning bylaws we worked under in this design actually allowed us to have a 1.5 meter rear yard setback. We chose to go 3 meters because it just gave more green room between the rear lot and the backs of the ADUs. But at the time of application, the rear yard setback was 1.5 meters.
Okay.
We went over 3. So we've already pulled them farther. And that was again because we actually liked the green belt behind the homes there and the forest behind that.
Okay. I will leave my questions there. Thank you very much for those answers. We don't have public input on these. We did get a fair bit of correspondence, which we are able to take. I'm going to start, not seeing any other questions, is with a motion to receive the report.
Move receipt.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. All those in favor? Any opposed, unopposed? That's sort of the procedural pieces. And then seek some direction from council.
I'd like to move that the Uplands Siting and Design Application ADP 00192 to allow the proposed construction of an infill housing development consisting of 3 homes on each of the 2 subject properties at the properties located at 2830 and 2850 Lansdowne Road be denied.
Okay, thank you. Is there a seconder? It's moved and seconded. Okay. We wish to speak to the
Yeah,
motion.
thank you. And I did read all of the letters that came in, and I took a lot of my thoughts from that. I was interested to hear what I'd hear tonight from my colleagues around the table. I do believe that the intent of the guidelines that we have in place right now is to maintain and reinforce the residential park-like setting of the uplands, ensuring that the new development is sensitive to existing dwellings and landscape features while promoting design excellence. And this, to me, does not fit in with that at all. I also have a little bit of I'm not really sure I enjoy the name choice of Olmsted Close. I believe that to propose that is kind of a slap in the face to Olmsted, is definitely not what he wanted for his plan of the uplands to be. And I think that for, as someone said, for more than 100 years, the mayors and councils of Oak Bay have been stewards of Oak Bay and the uplands. And these are permanent changes which to me is not something that our residents want to see in this way. I know that there's going to be a lot of pushback because we do need more densification, but I would hope that that the densification that we choose to do in an area like the uplands would be more fitting for the uplands. So thank you for coming forward with the design, but for me, I can't support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ask people to speak to the motion that's on the floor. Councillor Green?
Thank you. And I appreciate the application. I appreciate the forward-looking design in this particular subdivision. And I am purposely using the word subdivision because that's the appearance it has. It is a mini subdivision within a park-like subdivision, a park-like setting. I really appreciate the fact, for me, it feels there's too much uncertainty regarding these properties. We're not certain about the longer-term future of what might go here. And if we're talking form and character, I really believe this departs from the traditional and heritage form and character of the Uplands. It is, after all, a National Heritage Site, and it was recognized purposely because of the Olmsted vision and the Olmsted legacy. So at this time, I am unable to support this application. I share many of the comments of my colleague, Councillor Braithwaite, but again, I appreciate that this is certainly an innovative design for any other place but the Uplands, I think. So I appreciate the fact that there was a lot of effort put into this application. And those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Watson.
Thank you. I hear what's being said here. If Councillor Braithwaite had not moved that motion, I would have moved a motion to approve the design so that if I'd gotten a seconder, we could have had a discussion about it. So I will not be supporting a motion to deny it. I think there's real merit here and things that I would like to be able to explore with my council colleagues. So when the vote's taken, you won't have my vote to deny.
So I might just ask, because whether it's a motion in favor or a motion against, I think it's helpful for applicants to understand what works and what, if they go away to change it. I don't think it's fair just to say, we don't like it, go away. So perhaps, Councillor Watson, I'm happy to go back to the other speakers again if they wish to, but to you, perhaps maybe just speak a little bit to, you suggested that you'd like to approve it, but there might be a few suggestions of improvements or other things, so maybe you can just touch on some of that.
Yeah, so maybe if I can, I can't really speak to the motion to deny, but I'll speak to why I think it has merit for further discussion. I think that, first of all, what this is actually a request for us it's a siting and design application. It's not a rezoning application. It meets all the zoning requirements of a bylaw we've adopted. It's not a subdivision application. That may come later, but that's not what's in front of us. So when I was thinking about this, I wanted to be really focused on what are we being asked to do. And the architect and the developer has come in with a proposal which meets a very new bylaw on the books, and I think it does so with real design integrity. We got many letters from the public. Most of them are feeling uncertainty around this whole new scheme of being able to have more dwelling units on a lot and what we've experienced for 100 years. And one of the writers very thoughtfully wrote to the federal government and asked them, what are the qualities that we're supposed to be preserving in this area? And I looked at those. He got a very clear written response. And I looked at this and I thought, actually what's happening here does not fly in the face of any of the things that have been identified in the designation of this area, the Uplands, as a National Historic Site. Particularly that this development does not in any way change the street pattern. We're going to have a continuous street pattern that reflects what there is now. What will read from the street will be pretty much what read before. There are, as of 2 lots, 2 principal homes facing the street, and an elegant facade. Over the 100 years of development, there have been many, many, many different housing forms and design styles throughout the Uplands. It is so I've driven around extensively just to look at this. The range of design choices is vast, and that has all been incorporated over a 100-year history and works. So the fact, no discussion about this is modern or different or whatever. I think that the design itself and its landscaping plan is equally valid to the many other styles and characters that we see in the area. So the one concern I had when I thought it was a very innovative way to bring more housing to the community. It's not expected to be affordable unless there's a major public benefactor who wants to help with that. But it is part of our obligation as a council to encourage more housing, and I think this proposal does it in a very innovative way. Where I did have pause is that the Uplands really does, its striking feature is its beautiful forest. And to the extent that we can preserve as much of that as possible, not just through replanting, but by retaining important trees. That was the only thing about this proposal that made me stop and think. And it's because of what's already on the site. There's really quite a lovely Gary Oak glade at the back of the site. And if we remove all of it, it does actually detract from the overall forest. So I'd be happy to have a discussion, or I'd love to have a discussion as a group of council about, and with the applicant, if there's anything that can be done to mitigate the Gary oak loss. I think there's a lot of other trees on the site which are honestly neither here nor there. They can be replaced. There's actually quite a thoughtful planting plan. But I think this extensive reduction in the Gary oak canopy, which is one of the defining features of the uplands, it does give me a little bit of pause. So, just one other final thing. In terms of what we see on the landscape, the zoning for what were our S2 lots before the bylaw changes and what they are now were very minimal with respect to requirements for a floor area ratio and lot coverage. So what's going to be perceived on this lot is almost identical to what could have been obtained under the old zoning before the provincial government told us we had to allow 4 units per lot. I think the ratios for lot coverage was 25%, it's gone up to 30, and the ratio for floor area ratio has remained the same at 40%. So really, from a public interest in what we perceive basis, the treatment of the landscape, and we've added a live landscaping requirement, which didn't exist before. So overall, I think this application is actually a benefit to the community in many ways, but I would like to be able to discuss the tree issue. That was very long-winded, but I had a lot of notes. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Watson. Councillor Smart, speaking to the motion.
Thank you. I won't be supporting the motion on the table. I also was hoping to have a discussion about the merits of the project. I share a lot of Councillor Watson's views as with regards to a lot of the merits of the application, including the high quality design of the houses, the uniqueness of each house, the shared driveway approach and how it's the trees are used to shelter the driveway, the particular attention to the streetscape, and the fact that this applicant has come to us with providing more units and community in the uplands as opposed to 2 giant houses. So I do feel like there's a lot of merits that I would have liked to discuss. If given the chance, I was going to put forward option 2 to send the project back to staff for the applicant to particularly look at adjusting the building siting to reduce the tree loss and to maintain the park-like setting. So I'm similar to Councillor Watson. I do feel like there's actually a lot of merits to this design. Was just hoping to see some of that tree canopy retained, and I do feel like there's some slight innovative options, like perhaps on one side it could actually become a duplex and then the ADU moves up and then you have like a bit of that tree canopy on the site. I just wanted to hint at the respect for that tree canopy in the design. So I won't be supporting what's on the table.
Thank you. Are there speakers to the motion? Go ahead, Councillor Appleton.
Thank you, Worship. Difficult response on this one. And I think based on kind of what I've heard, I'm not in favor of the motion that's on the floor because I think that there is the possibility, there is still the possibility of revision. I will say right off the top that as written, I'm not in support of what's presented. And I will say this, that I think rather than some of the details provided, I think it's actually a miss because it doesn't actually go far enough. I think that what I have always felt about the intersection between the provincial housing guidelines and the Uplands siting and design guidelines is that it actually affords an opportunity that this proposal doesn't respond to. This proposal reads like a subdivision because essentially it is designed as a subdivision, basically in design. The scope of Uplands lots and the nature of Uplands lots and the way that the Uplands form and character design is supposed to be applied is such that you can achieve actually, this has been designed to achieve multiple smaller buildings with the idea of preserving green space around them. I refer specifically to under relationship to adjacent buildings in the design guidelines, saying that new development as much as possible within the existing development footprint with massing comparable in scale and massing to other buildings on the street. So I would argue that actually trying to minimize scale and massing with a whole bunch of smaller buildings is actually more out of step with Uplands design guidelines than actually potentially a smaller single building, or a larger single building, excuse me. I believe that larger buildings achieving the same FAR with more units in that building allow you to achieve that relationship to adjacent buildings development in the same footprint. I think you could actually get your 4 units onto these lots and preserve the majority of the trees. I cannot see my way through to supporting a development like this, which reads like a subdivision and has that level of impact on the trees on the backside of the lot. So I just think massing and proportion and the way this reads from the street is out of tune with what people would expect from Uplands. And I think that in terms of feedback, Your Worship, to your point about feedback to the applicant and future applicants about how we might achieve provincial housing guidelines and how we might respond to that 4 units per lot in the Uplands, I think really speaks to potentially different forms of buildings that are multi-unit in character and allow us to preserve that green space around the building that will read very much like a larger single-family house, but allowed for more units to be integrated. Things like heritage conversions on existing larger buildings in the community are also really valuable. So I don't think there's any reason that we can't build new that responds to that same kind of direction. So whether or not what is existing can be modified to reflect that type of response, I'd be interested to, have that opportunity afforded to the applicant. But with the impacts the way that they are now and with the response to the design guidelines the way that it is, I can't support what's in front of me. So I'm not actually going to support the motion on the floor because that is to reject. So I'm speaking not in favor of that motion, but I have some significant concerns about what's in front of us. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Appleton. Councillor Patterson?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And this is a tough one because I hate to outright reject it. But given what is presented in front of us, I think Councillor Appleton is right. It does read like a subdivision. And I think that there are other opportunities in new housing that could, in fact, do a better job of supporting the Uplands park-like atmosphere, and particularly with protection of the trees. I think the request for removal of that many trees on these 2 lots is substantial. And if you take that and you start to multiply it throughout the rest of Uplands, it won't take very long before the park-like atmosphere is greatly diminished. I do tend to agree with Councillor Appleton that perhaps a larger structure within the footprint and maintaining a lot of the green space around it could provide the district with some of the housing that the district would like to achieve, but in a way that really supports the form and character of Uplands and supports the tree canopy without having to perhaps wait 30 to 40 years before it starts to look like something. So, but it's very difficult because if we deny it outright, then it doesn't give the applicant a chance to go back and work with staff. So I'll listen to any other comments that come up before I make a final decision. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll keep my comments reasonably short. I don't actually, what I'm hearing around the table is sort of a general consensus that it isn't good enough as it is. And so whether that's a motion to deny with the comments going back to the applicant to change it, or it's a motion to refer it back to staff with some suggested changes, I think, and maybe I'll ask that question of staff. Is there a significant difference in those 2 approaches as long as we're capturing the comments being made? Mr. Green?
Good evening, Your Worship, members of Council. I guess there'd be a subtle difference if it would be a new application. It would have to go through a new process, go back to the ADP and then to Council. If it's referred back just to staff with some suggested changes, then we would simply work with the applicant to address those changes that Council is seeking.
Yeah, fair enough.
And also no application fee, I guess. There would be a new application fee with a new application would also be the main difference of, the $2,000 application fee.
Okay. So, yeah, so where I'm sitting on this one to the applicant is I don't think it meets the expectations, and I do just want to acknowledge, so we have brand-new zoning and new, I think when we've had the suggestions of what things would look like and the massing considerations through the different zoning, for the record, those typically came in as a single primary building with an ADU on them, not multiple buildings. So the green space was represented differently than having, significant paving plus multiple buildings on it. So I think what I'm hearing here is, I think, as we contemplated and agreed to allow for the multi-unit in the Uplands, the intention was not to my mind, allow for subdivision of these lots, so the lots to stay intact. And I think probably part of the rhythm here that I think, and I've heard it from others, is that this is designed in a way that looks like it will be built as a single family with multiple units, but it's designed to essentially have what is in effect 6 single family homes on it. And I think that's the crux of it. And I think, so there are aspects of this that could have articulated buildings, that could have buildings closer together, that could cluster them farther forward or together in a way that would preserve more of the tree canopy. I'm not objecting to the idea of this. I think there are lots of really lovely designs that allow for multiple pieces. So in terms of the motion that's on the floor, I'm frankly of the mind that, in terms of just, in fairness to any applicant who's coming forward, I would probably prefer that we send this back and allow them not to have to resubmit fees and so forth to do that. But I wouldn't support the application as it stands here. I think it probably needs a bit of a rethink, to my mind, and to find ways to protect, to allow for the bigger patch of trees at the back of the lot, to find a way to arrange the massing in a way that looks more like a centralized use of that massing to maintain a contiguous garden space in and around those buildings, which I don't think exists in this current building. I'll leave it there. A couple of things. I think the quality of the architecture, the quality of the design, I think the efforts made these are beautiful buildings, as I said. I don't think there's any question on any of that. I think the efforts to keep some of the little bit of a curve to the driveway, some of these little things I think can work quite well and have been done well. I think the problem here is just the structure of it, the grid layout of the buildings themselves is creating some issues on this lot. So, yeah, I'm not sure I'm going to support the motion. I think I'd probably prefer, just as a courtesy to people who are learning our new process here, to go back, to probably not decline it, but to send it back. So I'm probably not going to support the motion that's on the floor, although I think the net result will be really, I think 60 done, half a dozen of the other. We're going to send it back, I think, for some changes. So I'll leave it there. These are my comments on the motion that's on the floor. Go ahead, Councillor Braithwaite.
Thank you, Mayor. And I hear what you're saying, but to me, it's you're basically saying that you want to send it back for some changes. To me, it's not sending it back for changes. When we look at what is being proposed, that is not something that I could ever support on those lots. I think, again, what has been mentioned around the table, to have one unit or one house, one structure where there's multiple units within that structure is much more fitting. But I don't see how we can send this back and say, can you make that change? That's a completely different design. So would we not deny it and then have them come back with that completely different design? Because that's what I'm kind of hearing around the table, is that, there's a couple of people who support it in this way, but other people are saying, no, it should come back as a much different design. And yeah.
Legitimate question. I don't have an answer for that. Go ahead, Councillor Appleton.
Well, to follow up on thank you, Your Worship. To follow up on Councillor Braithwaite's comment, I would suggest that perhaps that's a question that we could potentially ask of the developer themselves as to whether or not a redesign of that nature was something that they would be willing to entertain. Because if it's not something that's actually achievable or something that makes sense as far as their design vision for the site, then maybe it is more simple to just reject what's in front of us and have them revisit that. So, whether or not we can achieve what the comments are saying, is really to the applicant to a certain extent.
Sure. So without reading the minds of my fellow councillors here, I'll give this to the applicant. You've heard some considerations on the table. I guess the question back to the applicant is, are these kind of changes sort of, contemplatable within your application?
Thank you for that question. I'm at a loss. We have zoning bylaws we can form. We have planning support. We have the ADP support. We meet all the zoning bylaws. We've actually reduced the number from 4 to 3 units. We're allowed to have 4 buildings on each of those sites. They have separations that are mandated through the zoning bylaws. There's a design guidelines from Uplands. Nowhere does it say should there be 4 homes on the site. They should be 1. Maybe the design guidelines for Uplands need review. But at the same time, what are we supposed to do at this point here? We did the things that we were supposed to do. We met with staff 5 times. We worked through it with planning, engineering, parks. We got all of their approvals, all of their recommendations, and here we are with, now I'm going to build a great big house with 4 apartments in it. You guys get to design it.
Appreciate that comment. And it is difficult with new rules and regulations coming in so fast that we're still learning as they go. Yep, I appreciate that. Maybe you have to come forward and, sorry, you're just going to have to come. So just don't sit down, hit the button on the microphone and then.
Chris Walker, 2XC Developments. I can say that no, a fourplex will not work on that site. Financially, we have certain financial obligations and we've paid a certain value for that property that was reflected in the current zoning. To go back and to make a change like is being suggested, there's no financial viability in that project. And we've relied on the zoning, and as my partner Chris said, we've gone through all the process. So, there are. I've heard some things said tonight about trees. I mean, we can take that into account definitely, but yeah, there's some serious economic challenges here with what's being suggested.
Comments?
Okay.
Helpful. Back to this table, we have a motion on the floor right now to decline. Any other discussion on that motion? Okay, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? And those opposed? Myself, Councillor Watson, Appleton, and Smart opposed. But I didn't hear resounding support for as is, so perhaps a motion to send back to staff or motion to approve, whichever people wish to see. Councillor Smart, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I'd like to put a motion forward for option 2 to send the project back to, to send the applicant back to staff to work send the application back to staff to work with the applicant to adjust the building siting to reduce tree loss to maintain a park-like setting.
Moved, seconded. Wish to speak?
Yeah, thank you. And I'm hearing some common ground and some differing opinions around the table. I feel like there is, as we discussed previously, some merit in the basis of this design enough that we could. I don't think it has to be a total redesign. I think it could be adjusting the building permit locations and really looking at the existing tree canopy and carving out areas in which to maintain contiguous canopy. It might mean moving a building forward, rotating another building, as I said previously, considering one duplex, but at its essence, I don't see an issue with having 6 units on the lot if the tree canopy is respected as an identity, an important identity on this site. And so that's why I'm putting that motion forward.
Thank you. Any other discussion on this? Councillor Appleton, Councillor Braithwaite.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just, I would ask that potentially that the motion be amended to include a couple of specific details. So at what point would that be acceptable?
The floor, you can make a motion to amend if you wish.
Thank you. So in response to the developer's comments, I would ask that the work with staff focus specifically on elements of the Uplands design guideline referencing general massing, proportion, and overall articulation of building in relation to established housing, and also relationship to existing buildings. So there are well, I would like to make those amendments because I'm making specific reference to components of the designated Uplands design guidelines, Your Worship.
Sure, thank you. Moved and seconded. So that's the motion. We have an amendment on the floor. Anything else you wish to add, Councillor Appleton?
I will just add, Your Worship, that this responds specifically to the developer's comment about the zoning bylaw and what specifications are in the zoning bylaw. There is a zoning bylaw. There are designations for what is allowed on a certain lot for number of units. There is also an Uplands siting and design guideline. And this is a very specific and very directed piece of legislation that has been in place for quite some time in Uplands that is known to be very specific in character and does allow for council-specific review of design and implementation of those guidelines. So those guidelines are clear. They are laid out. There is a response review form included as part of this package. I'm making specific reference to components of the review form that I feel have not met the guidelines established under the bylaw. And those could be things that could be worked on.
Thank you. Any other discussion on the amendment? Councillor Braithwaite?
So I think what I'm hearing Councillor Appleton say is that he would prefer not to see the 6 buildings, but that yet one building that's that matches what is around the Uplands as opposed to 6 separate buildings.
I think the amendment doesn't say that specifically. Amendment really just speaks to the context. Go ahead, Councillor Appleton.
For clarity, Your Worship, I appreciate Councillor Braithwaite's comments. I'm not an architect. I feel like there are ways that what I want to be able to do is to be able to afford the developer an opportunity to respond to the comments that have been provided by council in a specific directed way in reference to specific design guideline elements that are laid out as part of the bylaw. So I will leave it to the discretion of the developer how they choose to respond to that, but that's what I'm looking to achieve.
Okay, thank you for that. Other discussion on that amendment? Councillor Watson?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I have a little concern about that. The amendment per se is quite open, but the discussion that preceded it was very specific. And I disagree with Councillor Appleton respectfully that the form and these building massing things are necessarily large or bigger. They're not. They're not. There are many, many small houses in the Uplands, very, very diminutive houses in the Uplands. So to suggest that a larger massed building that had more units, which was the previous discussion, is more in keeping, I disagree with. And I think there's lots of evidence that that is not actually how the Uplands streetscapes works. There are lots of large mansions, and there's also some very small homes. So, including the one that's on one of the sites right now, the home that's going to be demolished if this goes through, is really quite tiny, but it's been there for a long time. So although I like the open nature of the motion, if the architect then goes away and the developer comes away and comes back with something which doesn't reflect what had been discussed earlier, I feel like they may get another, hard time in front of council, and I don't think that would be fair. So I at the moment, I'm not really leaning in supporting that amendment.
Thank you. It is just referencing their guidelines at this point, so I think Councillor Smart.
Yeah, thank you. I also won't be supporting the amendment. Because I find it confusing. The particular guideline that's being referenced, I actually feel has been achieved quite well. I like the general massing and proportion of the buildings. So it's, I didn't hear so much that it was, because I think the guideline we're referring to is the general massing, proportion, and overall articulation of building. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I don't have any issue with that, or expect any changes, or even understand what changes might be requested from that amendment. So I won't be supporting if it was related more to how the buildings are sited on the property and site design and relationships. Then I could understand that, but the existing amendment I won't be supporting.
Okay, thank you. Speak briefly to, go ahead, Councillor Patterson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And I do tend to agree with what is put forward now before us. I think that, and I appreciate what Councillor Watson said, there are some homes in Uplands that are of a smaller size, smaller footprint. The one unifying feature to Uplands, keeps coming back to the tree canopy, and that is the unifying ambience of Uplands, is that you can have different setbacks, you can have different forms and character, and you can have different size homes and even different size lots, but it is still that park-like atmosphere. So it is the protection of the canopy that is essential, that I think be taken into consideration in this, and the difference. I agree. These homes are the same size as some homes in Uplands. However, they are in a much more rigid, uniform pattern, as Councillor Smart has spoken to, so that we don't have that same ambience that we feel when we go through Uplands, where these are a very rigid, uniform type of lovely homes, great materials, but nevertheless it does deviate considerably from what we see in Uplands. How best to achieve that and maintain the park-like atmosphere, I don't know. I am not an architect. I just know that what I see before me does not present me with that option.
You? I'm going to speak briefly in favor of the amendment. I think I think it's a part and parcel. I do think the trees are important, but I think the articulation and location of the buildings is also an important part. So, and I think they do have to sort of reference back to that, the setting and design guidelines on those. So I'm supportive of the motion. I don't think if we're going to send it back, I think flagging those two things as the two areas to address makes sense to me. Any other discussion on the amendment? All right, all those in favor of the amendment? Any opposed? I have Councillor Green, Watson, and Smart opposed, so that does carry. So we have a motion asking for consideration of trees and the building massing and siting. Councillor Appleton, you still have the floor.
Just for clarification, Your Worship, option 2 in the staff report. Option 2 in the staff report references approval, not simply reference back to staff. So is the intent to approve, or is with the mover, just a question to the mover, are we modifying option 2 such that it's just a referral back to staff?
To the mover, Councillor Smart. I heard referral back to staff to address issues. So.
Yeah, I think what I'm hearing around the table is mixed enough that it sounds like council would like another touch point with this. So if that is procedurally an option to refer back to staff and then have it come back to us, I think from a consensus point of view, that's what I'm hearing that could move us forward today.
So just for our thank you for the clarification. Then is the motion on the floor? It is to refer it back to staff, for the applicant to work with staff to address the concerns raised here tonight. Okay, thank you. With those specific three pieces, the trees, the setting and design. Thank you. So we have an amended motion on the floor now. Calling a question fairly soon, but go ahead, Councillor Green, and then Councillor Braithwaite.
I'm just seeking clarification. Could you restate the motion again? And I don't have it in front of me, but is this to approve with amendments, to approve the application with amendments? Is that correct?
No, it's just with that clarification from Councillor Smart. The motion was to refer this matter back to staff to work with the applicant to address green space, tree retention, and then the upland setting and design standards for massing. Is that fair, Councillor Smart, where we are now with amendments?
That's fine. Did we vote and have that approved, the second amendment?
The amendment is approved.
Okay.
Yeah. Councillor Braithwaite.
Thank you. So I am speaking to the main motion now, and I will be voting against the main motion. And my reasons are that I don't think that it's fair to send the applicant away with for what I feel it would be a major renovation to what is here, and I don't think the applicant is willing to make that major renovation that would sit well with me for what this property is. It's been said around the table that there's many design choices or a range of design choices in the Uplands, and there are. To me, these are not 6 diverse houses. They're very similar architecturally, and so I find that a little bit difficult. And it does read like a subdivision. There does seem to be, with that fencing in there, it does seem to be private areas within the 2 lots, and so for me, it does read like a subdivision. And I can't see it being changed enough that I would be supportive of it. So I think it's better for me to deny, to vote against it now, and hear what else the people around the table have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor. Any other discussion? So just, I think in the interest of giving as much clarification as I can to the applicant on this one, I'm supportive of the motion. I would like the opportunity for the applicant and staff to work together on these. I will say that the idea of subdividing this sometime in the future is not something I would support, and I think some of the challenges of the design stem from that future look, the gridding, the kind of stacking of them on the lot. I think, and the pushback to the very back of the lot. I appreciate there's allowances for even closer, but to maintain that kind of that intact forest at the back. If there's ways of clustering those buildings closer together, moving the back buildings up, perhaps articulating the buildings in different ways so that they're not quite in such a what looks like a small subdivision. I think that's more in keeping with the park-like setting that we've talked about. I do think there's enough merit here for it to be considered. I think that there are, there's a lot of really positive aspects of this, but I think that it does read like a future subdivision, and I think that may be constraining some of the design aspects. So I just hope that with this referral back, that we can get to a design that is has a bit more green space, retains more of the trees, and allows for that streetscape feel to address the setting and design pieces. So that's where I'm at with this. I'm going to call the question then. All those in favor? And those opposed? Councillor Green and Councillor Braithwaite opposed. I think there is a path forward here. I wish you the best of luck to work with staff on what comes forward. Thank you. Moving to 8.3, and that took a little longer than I was intending, but we'll now, this is the Official Community Plan Amendment, OCP 00011, and Zoning Bylaw Amendment for 1950 Lansdowne Road / 3100 Foul Bay Road, which is, of course, Camosun College. So we welcome, I see members of the Camosun College team here. You're welcome to come forward. And Ms. Cook, welcome. You're waiting patiently outside with a lack of seats.
Thank you, Mayor, and hello, councillors. I'll just say a few words to introduce the application, and then as you see, the applicant is here to provide you with a short presentation regarding their application. So this is an application for an OCP and zoning bylaw amendment by Camosun College to facilitate the construction of a 429-bed student housing facility at the Lansdowne campus. 118 of these units are defined as dwelling units, which will contribute to the meeting of the district's housing target order and meeting the district's housing needs. The applicants will work closely with the district to address concerns raised through the review process and will work collaboratively with us to achieve the best outcome for the site. Staff are generally supportive of the application and proposed land use and are satisfied with the assessment that the applicant has undertaken and the information that has been submitted. The applicant has attended the Advisory Planning Commission meeting, and the APC was generally supportive of the application and recommended that it be approved. So I'll now hand it over to the applicants. Mark Holland is here to give a presentation, and both staff and the applicants are happy to take any questions and discussion that the Mayor and Council have. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Holland.
Thank you, Your Worship. Council, it's good to be back with you on this project. Just here, the presentation was in your package and it has a fair amount of detail in it. I'm happy to just do a quick run through it for the record if you wish, and then
We have had a chance to read it and go through it, so, but I think for the benefit
Okay.
of the public, it never hurts to have a quick presentation to understand what's in front
Very
of
good.
us. And for those watching online and wondering where this is at the stage where council is going to consider its, meet the merits to go forward to a public hearing, and then some other directions on some ancillary work to still go forward. So,
Sure.
just so anybody's watching, this is not the decision night tonight. This is a step in the process to advance it. So please go ahead, Mr. Holland.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I have a number of colleagues here with me today, and we can introduce them at time of questions, should you wish. They know it's a complex project, and they know the pieces of different things around that, so I'll be pleased to bring them forward. We had a robust discussion with the APC, and we were all here for quite a while discussing those. Next slide, please. So we were here in May. Thank you again for your invitation to come, actually April, to come and speak to council about the launch of this project. About a year ago, the province provided funding for this project, and we've been moving forward through the application process since then. And the work with your staff has been absolutely unparalleled. And I'm not blowing smoke at them. I mean, this is one of the most smoothest and fastest and most collaborative approvals processes I have experienced in 35 years of professional practice. So I think a huge kudos to your staff go through to have gotten us here this far. Next slide, please. So this is Camosun College. You're all familiar with Camosun College. It's one of the largest colleges in the entire province. It's got 12,000 students, about 1,400 employees. A good measure of them live in Oak Bay. About 800 students and about 170 employees live here. The province provided over $150 million of funding. This doesn't come along every day, as we know. So this is a really great gift from them to address both the housing issues and to help support our post-secondary education. Next slide, please. The project has many benefits. Just quickly in summary, this is nonprofit housing targeted at the students. This is a much better use of land. Right now, there's a very large paved parking area here, and we're converting that to a mix of uses that is much more amenable to the community's goals. We're going to increase the tree canopy at the end of this beyond what is there now, according to Council's tree bylaw. This will significantly, it's the first time in my career that I've ever had the opportunity to bring 420 beds to a community and have less traffic. So this is not for new students, this is for existing students. Currently, a very significant majority of them commute from outside. Even of the CRD, this will permit many of them to live on campus and not need to commute for their studies. We've taken great pains to try and preserve as many of the trees where we can, moving the buildings around to work around some of the more mature Gary oak trees. And Camosun currently offers a number of facilities to the community. We're going to bring them to the community, so there'll be a coffee shop, rentable meeting rooms, public courtyards, and things that are part of this process. Next slide, please. So we're dealing with the part of Camosun campus here on the Lansdowne campus that is in Oak Bay. As you know, the boundary between Saanich and Oak Bay runs right through the middle of the campus. So this site occupies the significant majority of the part of it that is in Oak Bay. And as you can see from the diagram here, it's essentially just one large parking lot at the moment. Next slide, please. So we're here for a two-stage or a two-layer approval. The first is an OCP amendment. This is required for two reasons. The first is to permit a building up to 6 stories. It's not currently the allowable height in the OCP. And the second thing is to clarify that student housing is permitted in an institutional use on this site only. So this is a site-specific amendment to your OCP land designation that would permit that. The second layer is the rezoning. Again, this is for site-specific issues for the specific building. We combined the lots to make one clean lot here, different setbacks, and a height limit change. That's essentially where the two layers are. I'll speak just briefly to the question of zoning here. We got a number of questions in here from staff at the end of the day. There was a question in the zoning around FAR of, it looked like it was one FAR permitted previously and a one FAR permitted afterwards. Currently, the site is fairly large. The building currently is far below 1 FAR, and staff have been working to streamline, future issues with Camosun. We don't don't know when or if ever there would be more money to build an additional building on some of the rest of the site. But at this point, the 30% maximum site coverage and the 6-story height would probably keep any future building down around that or below as well. So we manage density through numerous ways to box it in. Staff have acknowledged that the FAR might climb slightly above 1 FAR at some point in a future lifetime if another building is built there, but those other controls stand firm and would maintain a very low site coverage overall for any future development. Next slide, please. Concurrent to this would be a development agreement. So as we move through this process, there are commitments that Camosun makes to you through this process in exchange for the zoning rights should you choose to grant them. So that is under draft at the moment. Your council report covers the majority of the key issues that would be in that development agreement in plain English. We have not released it to the lawyers pending tonight. Should council in your wisdom allow us to begin to move forward toward a public hearing at some point in the future, we will get both parties' lawyers down to the business of drafting this up as a legal contract. And included in that would be the commitment to frontage improvements. That was another question that came through. That issue would be resolved. They're all we're working through them live right now as we go. Nothing would be approved without nothing would move forward without council's approval. Development agreements are a condition of any rezoning when they're used that way, and so this would all be under detailed scrutiny by yourselves at third reading and at fourth reading. Next slide, please. There's many alignments with your current OCP for this project, including specifically supporting initiatives like this for our post-secondary, aligning height in different areas, bringing some neighborhood commercial into this particular area. Actually was identified as a little bit of a desert for that, reducing peak hour traffic, modal change, things like that, active transportation. It is further even more aligned with what we saw in the discussion during the OCP open houses, which I'll speak to again in a moment, around adding some additional density along those corridors close to the university and Camosun, et cetera. But that is yet to go through your process, so I won't speak any further about that other than to say there's many alignments in policy here. Next slide, please. Camosun has a deep relationship and long-standing advisory committees with our First Nations here in the CRD and the Peninsula. They were specifically consulted on the design of this building, and they have been watching it as it has evolved over the last year, providing many pieces of advice on how they wanted it to unfold. Though that advice has not led to the request for a large piece of First Nations art outside the building in kind of a large sort of, billboard image, if you will. It's focused more on the internal operations, including specific areas where things like smudging and other activities were specifically spoken about and advised in the design team. And they remain involved as we move forward. Next slide, please. We had quite a bit of community engagement on this. It was quite an interesting discussion, and I'll speak to this here in just a moment, as well as some of the concerns that were raised. We had a project website up from the front. We thank you again for your staff and yourselves allowing us to participate in the OCP workshops. So we had several boards that showed the basics of the project, along with you, Vic. Both post-secondary institutions were at your OCP, your 4 sessions. I was there for several of them. We had at least 1 or 2 team members at every single one of them. Hundreds of discussions. It was quite a vibrant discussion as we went through that. And then we held our own open house on June 3rd on campus. You can see an image here in this slide of the room where it was just as we were setting up. About 70 people came. We delivered invitations to the surrounding area. I personally delivered them. The last time we had a session, Canada Post was grumpy, and some folks didn't get the notice till the day of. Was not going to take the risk on this one. I spent 6 hours. I hand-delivered every invitation within 350 to 700 meter radius. We showed the map of our deliveries to the president of the North Oak Bay Residents Association, and he was fine with that. He felt that it had covered the area that was necessary. Next slide, please. So we had about 70 people attend. There was 4 doorways that came in, so it was a little bit hard to keep every counting, but we were pretty close. Comment cards, a good stack, were delivered. About 68% lived within 400 meters of the site in the Oak Bay side. So very strong attendance from the neighboring neighborhood. We had 90%. I include both qualitative and quantitative questions. 90% of the people who answered the survey were supportive of the project, and I would say that mirrors the discussions we had in the OCP meetings. There was some opposition composition. There was about 10% of the folks who lived, from our discussions with them, basically across the street or just immediately there. This is a bit of a change for that immediate area, and they had some concerns. Next slide, please. There were 4 areas of concerns they identified. The first one was privacy. In that area right now, there are, 3, 4-story buildings are as tall as it gets. So moving to 6 gave folks some concern. Most areas will not be impacted from a privacy point of view. There are a few homes, however, across Foul Bay that just have a 6-foot fence or a hedge about that high. So they would be the ones that will see the building the most. So I understand that there were concerns. Fortunately, the design of the building as an E shape with the arms of the E pointing in that direction mean that there's almost no units that actually look in that direction. There's a very, very small percentage. There are no balconies in this building, so folks are not going to be hanging out outside. It's an internal energy efficient building. Most all the units face north or face south into the courtyards, up into the parking area or down into Camosun, so the campus. So there's very little privacy implications, and the building is a long ways away from University Woods, and about 50% of the entire parking area, along with most of the trees, are between it and the Argyle Saanich side. So there will be a few that will see that, but there's hardly any units that will be looking in their direction. Tree planting was another issue that was concerned. There's a grove of trees that are along Foul Bay. They're mostly aspen trees. They don't have a long life. They grow in gravel ditches, and that's why they're there. So those will be replaced with Gary oaks and other species. The University Woods and Argyle setbacks are preserved. We've increased the setbacks on the University Woods side by about 50% more than some of the other areas in an attempt to give them confidence that that tree buffer will be retained. Again, this building is in the farthest corner from University Woods that we could find, so it's down on the very southern point. Minimizing disruption, because there's no balconies, having students on site now 24/7, there was some concern about noise. We all remember what we were like as students when just doesn't understand how other people feel. There will be no balconies, so it's unlikely that big boom boxes and parties would be occurring in any way, shape, or form. So that's it. More importantly, there will be a building manager on site 24/7. So if anything or a complaint comes in or anybody gets out of hand, there is someone in the building there at all times to respond and bring any conflict down to a close on this one. And Camosun has a very open relationship with all the community around, so if there was an issue, they'd respond. Peak hour traffic and parking were both also the 4th issue that were raised in the community feedback. The traffic study shows that we actually reduce peak hour traffic because that's 429 people who don't have to drive or find other ways to get to campus. They'll be living on campus. The student housing will also reduce the demand for parking. The parking ratio for students is very, very low, so there's very few cars associated with this. So we do not believe there's no new students in this equation, so we don't believe there's any additional concern for people parking in the neighborhood area on the streets, which was of concern. Next slide, please. Our project timeline, as I mentioned at the beginning, started in 2024. In order to achieve occupancy in summer of 2028, we need to start construction this spring. So that's what the team is working on. We accept whatever council's feedback will be. We may need to make some changes to the work that's been done, but they're working hard to get a building permit ready for application and review here this winter. Next slide, please. So building design in an institutional zone like this is not generally subject to intense ADP or design reviews. However, we had a discussion with a good number of yourselves, as well as a lot in the community, on the design issues. And so we've put together a design brief. It's not required in the application, but we put it into the package in case you wanted to get into any of those discussions. We wanted the team to illuminate their thinking, their rationale, and how they went about the design. So quite pleased to present that for record if any of you would like to get into the details. I'll mention a few of them right now. Next slide, please. So
Mr.
it's
Holland, I might just ask that, they are all in here, and I
Yes.
might just ask that we kind of go
Keep
through
moving,
either
okay.
very, very quickly, because we're
Very good.
15 minutes in basically now.
Thank you.
And we need to get on to questions.
So let's move forward then about.
Can I ask just one question that's on the slide, actually? This slide says 6 stories, 24 meters high, but the zoning ask is 30 meters. Can you just maybe very briefly explain the rationale?
Thank you, Your Worship. The rationale for that just had to do mostly with the future, based on the topography and how average grade is calculated. So at the site where we are at, when we calculate the average grades, it sets in at 24. There's other topography in the rest of the site, and there was sort of, let's make it a clean 30 that would not then trigger a whole series of variances or issues for a building permit in moving forward. That was the main reason, was just to allow a little bit of flexibility in that.
Thank you.
And so just to also further clarify that that's also because, and this is obviously a 6-story residential building, but in the future there could be a 6-story institutional building, and an institutional building would have higher floor plates higher from those ceilings, so those stories would be higher in an institutional building than in a residential building. So hence the reason for the 30 metres in that zone, which is a similar request that has come from UVic in relation to their institutional lands as well.
Thank you.
So maybe if we could flip through the slides then forward, let's go to maybe the parking slide, and I'll just touch on a few of those things. Your Worship, is that appropriate to skip through most of the core design pieces? So the parking issue was raised. Currently, there is an excess of parking on the campus based on the studies that were done at sort of peak class time in the winter when all the classes are running, of about 223 spaces. Now, the building removes 250 spaces from this parking lot. And so the question was, how does that work out? But it also reduces the demand by 207 spaces. So we have a future parking capacity of 430, of which 180 is still in excess of the busiest days that the parking team studied multiple days of how Camosun operates. So that gives us plenty for extra events without people spilling into the neighborhood. And that's the rest of that area that's, again, also a buffer with University Woods. Next slide, please. Just a final comments on parking, though. We have both EV infrastructure on the area, and we will be expanding that. And there also are EVO cars. There's 4 shared cars on campus now, and they're currently under discussion with the group to see how many more we can get there. So those are also some of the details that are under play right now to both resolve the number of EV stalls that will be there, but and the number of shared cars. Both are expected to expand, sometime potentially significantly. In terms of infrastructure, sanitary investigations are underway. We've done a parallel, so Camosun, the Camosun campus drains and is serviced by both Saanich and Oak Bay. So both have been under discussion as to water and sanitary and things like that. As it's standing now, there's plenty of water in the supply. We have a CRD force main that's right close, so that is deemed to be definitely adequate for this building. The sanitary line is, under the current directions we're headed, would drain into Oak Bay's area. Unfortunately, there is a very large chunk of rock sitting right underneath the CRD force main water, just high enough that we can't drain by gravity. So there would be a very small pump station that's proposed that would lift that sanitary flows just over the CRD main to allow it to connect to your stormwater, your sanitary lines, and it would be upgraded up through to basically the intersection with Lansdowne, where we would meet the other full-size main. There was a question raised about the Bowker Creek watershed. So we're on the very eastern edge of this, and that sets a priority for pollution, for percolation, those sorts of approaches to this. And so our stormwater process will actually have less runoff after development than it has now. So we're actually decreasing the amount because it's basically a paved parking area. So while we put a building in, we have courtyards, we have a lot of new landscaping around that. And so we'll be supporting the intent of the Bowker Creek watershed and managing less runoff than there was previously. The frontage improvements will be determined as part of the development agreement. They're being worked out right now in terms of what those would be along Foul Bay. Next slide, please. So to bring this to conclusion, the project brings many benefits to the community and to Camosun. About 138, what was the number? 138 million? What's the, 1.38 million, get my decimal points, 1.38 million in DCCs will be paid. We bring 118 housing units. It's a high performance building. We think we're maybe a point or two shy of LEED Platinum at the moment. There'll be a new community coffee shop, a little retail space, and a meeting space that can be rented by the community. And it will definitely support Camosun's success, and it will reduce traffic and the need for parking in the area. Next slide, please. So if council in your wisdom moves us forward on this, the plan is to complete the work on the development agreement and go through this process through a public hearing so you can hear directly from the community in terms of their thoughts on this, into building permit design and hopefully into start construction in the very early spring of next year, according to the current project plan. So I have team members here that can answer questions as they come up if I don't have the answer, and we'll end the presentation there. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Mr. Holland. I'm just cognizant of time for the evening, so I do want to keep our questions very pointed on this one. I'll go around to the table here. Go ahead, Councillor Braithwaite.
Thanks very much. Thanks for the presentation. And your comments at the very beginning, I'd like you to let the province know how smooth the process was, just because. Just put a plug in for us, please. I do quite like this design, but I do have some questions. My first question would be around the lift station. So what success have we, and maybe this is for our staff perhaps, what success have we seen with the private lift stations for sanitary sewer line needs? And the reason I ask is because I think the Bowker perhaps had its own lift station. I'm not sure, but, and I know there could have been issues with that, but just if we can talk about the private lift stations for sanitary line needs.
In terms of reliability?
Yeah, in terms of
Mr. Green?
reliability, yeah.
Yeah, good evening, Your Worship, again. So the Bowker collection wasn't a lift station, that was a retention tank that was built underneath the building. That there was issues with the maintenance of that tank. This is a lift station. I guess UVic is another example where they do have a private lift station on site, and obviously the applicants have been working with our engineering team to work out the logistics of that lift station, and our Director of Engineering seems comfortable that that is a reasonable solution that would be able to help Camosun deal with the sanitary issues that they've encountered.
Thank you. And then just to the applicant, the lift station currently, if you look at the site, I think on the parking, or on the parking slide, you could see where the actual building is located. I had a really hard time figuring out exactly where the building was located. It wasn't until I got to the tree management report that I realized exactly where it was. I thought it was far closer to University Woods. So if anything, it would be nice to be able to figure out exactly where it was on the site. But I know the lift station currently, when you're looking at the building, is on the right-hand side. Was there any thought as to putting it on the left-hand side to kind of keep it away as far as possible from any other residences or anything? And is there any odor that comes from that, or is it all very self-contained?
Through Your Worship, yes, we are currently revisiting the location of the lift station. That is currently live action that's being done in terms of that. And part of it was is there a chance that it might be able to service some other Oak Bay, folks for the same reason. So yes, that's doing that. As far as we know, there's no odor that comes from them. They're a sealed pumping and station of that sort. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have a couple of more. Then as far as the impact, I mean, it's great that there's very little frontage onto the Foul Bay Road, but there will be some impact onto the houses that are across the street on Foul Bay. I'm not sure exactly what the distance from the front of the building to the actual houses will be, but I'm wondering if there was ever, or if you have done a shadow study, or if you've considered doing a shadow study to kind of see what effect it might have on those 5 or 6 houses.
Thank you, Your Worship. Did we do a shadow study? We have not taken a shadow study. We have none. Yeah, thank you, through Your Worship. Just checking to see if they had, we've not completed a shadow study, certainly something that we can do. The distance between the building, so the arms of the building are not very wide. The student housing the wings are fairly narrow. So there would be sort of these linear shadows. The profile of Foul Bay, I believe, is 22 to 25 meters wide, I think, probably, as a major arterial. Then we get to the setback then we have many of the homes there actually have trees. There's only a few that don't have trees. And then there's the setback from that fence to where their home would be. There's also a 6-meter setback from the property line to the beginning of the building. So the angle of the sun would have to be, it'd be late in the day in winter before that shadow would start basically creeping up far enough to have any impact. Fortunately, in the winter, folks, aren't in their backyards where that would impact their backyards. So, but if that's a council request, we can provide a shadow study. Thank you.
Anything else, Councillor Braithwaite?
Yeah, two more little things. I am concerned a little bit about the parking, because, and I understand the math behind the parking. However, what I would want to have taken into account is that a lot of those students who are currently taking the bus to the campus, they perhaps leave their car behind because they don't want to pay for parking on the site. So to have only 34 parking, to think that there's only 34 parking spots needed for that number of units, I wouldn't mind seeing the parking a little bit more, like a little bit higher of a percentage there. So that's just a comment on that. But then my last question would be that I did read in the parking study that the housing would be available for short and long-term lease over the summer months. And I'm wondering if that would be directed at students or as at the population as a whole. And then how does parking kind of go in for that? How would parking be taken into account for that?
Thank you, Your Worship. Would it be appropriate for my colleague Ian Toll here from Camosun to speak to what their plans are for exactly how those housing units might be managed differently in the summer? Would that be appropriate?
Yep, that'd be great. Thank you.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Ian Toll. I'm the Executive Director of Facility Services and Campus Development at Camosun, resident of Sydney. So we are, to some degree, still working out how we're going to manage the housing and how it's going to be occupied. But one thing that we do know for certain that we've already decided is that the student housing project will be only for students. So we do not have any plans to rent out housing to the public over the summer months or anything like that. So this would be related to the comment about, that there might be students that over the summer would be related to students having probably a variety of lengths of contract. Some of our programs run through the summer. We may be accommodating trade students even who will have their time at school at various times throughout the year. So it would just vary. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
That's it.
Didn't see any other hands. Are there any? Go ahead, Councillor Watson and then Patterson.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mayor, and thank you for the presentation. It's a great package, easy to follow. I just have one question, and it would be to Ian. In terms of allocating those housing units to students, are they restricted to Lansdowne campus students, or can interurban students live there too? How is the college thought about this and the fact that people change programs and may have classes at one campus and then be back at the other? So I'm curious.
Right. Thank you for the question, through your worship. That is, as I mentioned, something that we're still working out in terms of how exactly we're going to allocate these things. But certainly, we're not restricting it to Lansdowne only students. So we're looking at our full student body and then trying to figure out how to actually allot the various units that we'll have. Because our understanding is that we have demand well beyond what we're supplying here. So that's still a work in progress. And it's our first housing project, so can't really rely on past experience. So yeah, that's still being worked on.
And so just a comment, that could affect your parking calculations because those, without a shuttle bus or easy bus service between the two campuses, there kind of is, that you may impact how students actually want to move from one campus to the other. Just a thought, comment, thank you.
Thanks for the comment. Councillor Patterson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and through you to our guests here. Yes, the APC, the Advisory Planning Committee, was very much in favor of this application, so much so that we actually convened a special meeting during the summer to be able to comment on it. And a couple of things that they did mention, though, I would just like to raise again to see if any more work has been done. One was for a demand shift transportation report, because certainly having the students living on campus, that's great and they will be there, but we do have to assume that they will leave the campus at off hours, and certainly so that will put a lot more demand. And the concern that was raised was consideration for the pedestrian and transit the circulation areas. It was noted that the circulation areas are very modest and perhaps on the south side of Lansdowne are almost non-existent. It's kind of like a ledge. And so I'm just wondering if any work is being done with both, municipalities that are adjacent to the college to talk about sidewalk improvements and transit stop improvements.
Okay, I'm not familiar with that discussion. Are you?
Mr. Holland?
Thanks.
And I do note that there's part of this recommendation is that traffic impact assessment and parking study is to be still finalized, but perhaps if you have some information around those specific topics.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through Your Worship, at this point, both the parking study and the transportation study are being updated and renewed. So the draft that I was speaking to is the latest one. We'll take that back. Very pleased to take that back and see if they can review that and offer a few other comments around how that fits, because I remember from delivering all of the invitations, suddenly there was no sidewalk on Lansdowne and you're squeezing yourself along and running across traffic. So yeah, we'll take a look at that and see kind of where the desire lines, where the patterns are going to be, and if there's any implications to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Green. Oh, Councillor Patterson, did you, no, Councillor Green? Questions?
Thank you thank you very much. Thank you very much for the presentation, and through you, Mayor. Just one question around accessibility and mobility issues for students with disabilities. What are the provisions both on the ground and in the buildings that you've been looking at, if any, to accommodate students with those challenges? Thank you.
Thank you. Through Your Worship, if it'd be appropriate, I'd like Glenn Cook, our project manager, to maybe come and answer this question. I think he has some additional information to offer on Councillor Patterson's thoughts. Would that be appropriate?
Absolutely. Go ahead. Please come forward.
Thank you. Good evening, Your Worship and Council members. Glenn Cook, Project Manager for the scheme BTY, resident of Langford. One day would love to be a resident of Oak Bay, so we'll keep working on that one. Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Through Your Worship, happy to come back and provide some comments on the accessibility point. So we're very proud to say we'll be providing accessible apartments, and we've a range, I should say, of housing options, including quads, as singles, and a traditional dormitory style. Each one of those will have accessible options on each of the floors. We're actually looking to finalise the exact accessible specification and numbers right now. But in every apartment type and every floor of the building, there will be options for accessible and less abled persons. We're very passionate about equitable access throughout the building.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Thanks.
Good stuff. No, thank you.
Thank you. Other questions from members of council? I'm not seeing any.
Oh, yeah, if I may, I could add a bit more texture to a comment previously from Councillor Patterson through Your Worship in regards to the Transportation Demand Management Plan. So there's actually a previous TDM plan put in place by Camosun College back in 2019 with a roadmap in that and how to provide better transportation options for the campus and for visitors. It's a fairly large document, but there's a lot of strategies and actions in that plan. And one of those actions in the plan was actually to undertake student housing on campus. But we have spoken to this within our traffic management plan produced by Watts, which is one of the attachments to the council reports, where we pull out just an example of some of the principles and proposals within the TDM that are now being achieved, we believe being achieved by the student housing project.
Thank you very much. There's any other questions? So I'm going to guide us through a process. If council wishes to see this advanced to a public hearing, you start with a motion to receive.
Proceed.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed? Then the three bylaws for first and second reading have to be read aloud. So if I can get someone to read.
I'll move that. The official community plan bylaw number 4620, 2014, amendment bylaw number 4925, 2025 be read a first and second time.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed?
And I'll move that the zoning bylaw number 3531, 1986, amendment bylaw number 4926, 2025 be read a first and second time.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed?
And I'll move that the parking facilities bylaw number 3540, amendment bylaw number 4928, 2025 be read a first and second time.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed? And then we can just move the balance in terms of considering the proposed community plan, direct staff to schedule, and that be authorized to register as Section 29 legal. And
I'll make the motion to remove the balance of the recommendations by
Moved and
staff.
seconded. Any discussion, any of those aspects? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed, none opposed? Certainly looking forward to the work continuing, looking forward to the public hearing and hearing from the public more broadly on this, and excited to see this advancing. So thank you very much for being here tonight. All right, thank you. The rest of the agenda items maybe not all of them, most of the rest of the agenda items do have public input. So I'm going to move on to Section 9, Bylaws and Permits. The first item here, 9.1, is short-term rental bylaw amendments. For those attending online, there's not many people in the audience left, but there's some. And those online, anybody who wishing to speak to this, there will be an opportunity. Procedurally, we'll have the staff provide an introduction. We'll go to council questions, then we'll go to public input, and then we'll come back to council to give some direction. And Mr. Bull, our Director of Community Building and Planning, is here to provide a brief presentation, and then we'll get to questions. Welcome, Mr. Bull.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm joined online by Bridget Reynolds, our consultant, and in a moment by Robert Letts, our Senior Bylaw Compliance Official. And just a few notes before we have the presentation available, but Council could also opt to skip that part. I'll wait for direction on that, but I did want to make a few comments following your earlier direction for a prioritized bylaw amendment for short-term rentals. We've worked together, the three of us, on this report. A number of changes are combined with a limit of 90 nights of short-term rental stays per year. And this kind of narrow approach outlines a program that offers new but limited options for short-term rentals. All except one of the consultant recommendations have been included in the proposed bylaw amendments. And Ms. Reynolds has a short presentation available if there's time and interest. Thank you, Mayor.
I think, given the public interest in this, I think it's worth having the presentation. It's a 12-slide presentation. If we can keep this to sort of 7 or 8 minutes maximum, that'd be appreciated, and we'll get to some questions from that. So over to you, Ms. Reynolds.
Okay, thank you very much, Your Worship and council members. So I will keep it brief. And so we're talking about short-term rentals, of course, going into the bylaw amendments. And next slide, please. So briefly, just the order of affairs. And next slide, please. So as council's aware, the province adopted the Short-Term Rental Accommodation Act in 2023, and then June 23rd of this year, council directed staff to prioritize amendments, and that's what we're presenting today. Next slide, please. Just briefly, the Short-Term Rental Accommodation Act requires that short-term rentals may only be in a host's principal residence, and that could be either the main dwelling unit and as well as one secondary suite or another accessory dwelling unit. The Act defines the stays of short-term rentals as those stays of less than 90 days. The Provincial Act establishes the minimum standards for short-term rentals. So that means that jurisdictions can adopt more stringent regulations if they choose, including to prohibit the use outright. June 2nd of this year was the deadline for hosts to register with the province, and then on the 23rd of June, any unregistered short-term rentals were to be removed from the registry, the provincial registry. Next slide, please. In Oak Bay, the regulations currently prohibit short-term rentals of less than 30 consecutive days. And so that means under the current situation, current provincial regulations, that allows short-term rentals to operate if the stays are between over 30 and 89 days. Business licenses aren't currently issued. At preparing the report and the presentation, there are 21 registered short-term rentals in Oak Bay. And Robert Letts confirmed that there are an additional 5 that are under review by the province since the preparation of the report and presentation. Next slide, please. So just briefly, again, this is just showing the range of what some of the other jurisdictions in the capital region are doing. Again, at one end, the prohibition, and moving to the just follow those jurisdictions that are following the provincial regulations, so taking that more hands-off approach. Some that are Machosen and Souk that are regulating through the business license bylaw only, and then others that are a little more complexity with both business license bylaw and zoning bylaw regulations to regulate the use. And then, not surprisingly, the greater complexity requires greater staff resources and administrative oversight. Next slide, please. So, what the proposed approach, and this approach was certainly discussed with various departments. So, considering allowing short-term rentals in a principal residence only, but this could include a secondary suite or a detached accessory dwelling unit, recognizing that in some instances, tenants might want to rent out their principal residence, and as well, some owners of a property may in fact live in the accessory dwelling unit and rent out the principal residence, and they may want to rent out their principal residence. So it's trying to establish more of an equitable field for both owner households and tenant households. Proposing to permit the use in all zones where residence is permitted as a primary or principal use. And so this would include most housing typologies and up to 22 zone districts currently. The proposed approach intends to identify permit the use in an approved dwelling unit only. So that's where, a building permit has been issued in the case of, let's say, a secondary suite or an accessory dwelling unit. Proof of residency would be required, as well as approval from a landlord or a strata council should this be a rental unit or within a strata. The proposal is to limit the maximum number of nights to 90 per calendar year, and again, this is to limit the use so that it's not on a continuous basis. It also recognizes the desire that people expressed about wanting to be able to rent their homes out while they're on vacation. Also reflects that this is in fact an accessory use. And the provincial portal makes it easy to monitor the number of nights. The proposed amendments don't recommend any signage for the use. Also, no parking is recommended. Additional parking is recommended, and that is consistent with provincial direction about reducing parking requirements, and also recognizing that most dwelling units typically have a minimum of 2 parking stalls per their dwelling unit. And also by limiting the number of night stays to 90 days, the thought was that would minimize some of the potential nuisance issues. Inspections would be a requirement, and this was certainly discussed with bylaw enforcement, building permitting, and fire department staff. And these departments recommended life safety inspections be completed. And then, of course, a business license would be required, consistent with the Provincial Act. And then as far as the the business license fee, there's a recommended figure there, $100 for the annual fee plus $1.50 per square foot for the short-term rental. And for brevity, just moving on, so 3 bylaws are proposed to be amended. zoning bylaw, business license bylaw, and the municipal ticket information bylaw. And there is some overlap between both the zoning bylaw and the business license bylaw. And the intent there is that the having some of that repetition in the business license bylaw is important because you're then able to establish certain conditions, and business licenses can then be either suspended or not reissued if a host doesn't continue to comply with the bylaws. It allows for easier enforcement. As far as the zoning bylaw amendments, it would be establishing a new section in the general regulations where all the regulations associated with short-term rental would reside, instead of spreading it across all the different zone districts. So it's taking a little bit of a different approach than what is currently the case in the zoning bylaw. And then the next slide, please. Then speaks to the process for the zoning bylaw amendment. Because the proposed amendments are consistent with the official community plan, a public hearing isn't required. But if no public hearing is required, certainly a notice of first reading must be provided as dictated by the Local Government Act. And Bylaw 4855 does delegate that to providing that notice to staff. And then the next slide provides the additional recommendations related to the business license bylaw and municipal ticket information bylaw. And the next slide is any questions.
Thank you very much for that summary. And I'm going to turn here to members of council with questions. I'm just going to, again, in the interest of time, make sure our questions are concise and the answer is the same way. Go ahead, Councillor Patterson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and through you to, I'm not sure, staff or the consultant, but what constitutes proof of residency?
Ms. Reynolds?
Yeah, at this point, it could be various government identifications that require your proof of residency, whether it's your health card, driver's license, something akin to what you need to show for a homeowner's grant.
Councillor Patterson?
Thank you for that information. One of the things that I note that has been raised, and I've had some experience with, but limiting the maximum occupants in a unit. And I did read in the report how per bedroom it could be 2 adults or whatever, two occupants per bedroom. But where houses have been outfitted to have 5 to 7 bedrooms, that's still quite a number of people that can be in a unit. Is there consideration for maximum, or is there within any dwelling unit a maximum occupancy?
Ms. Reynolds, I'm going to help Mr. Bull.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you. Yes, it was one of the things that Ms. Reynolds pointed out. Some municipalities rely on that. We were talking about that with staff and hesitant to put it in because we're starting to get into regulating people rather than the use. But it's a bit of a gray area in a way. On the one hand, we think it probably will arrange itself. On the other hand, if there would be concern, and we haven't seen those issues just yet of kind of overuse, so to say, it could be regulated on that basis. So thank you.
Thank you. And I guess just further to that could potentially be something that's picked up during the inspections. The last question I have before the echo drowns me out, just the collection of fines, is that available to add to a real estate tax account, or are they recovered only through the legal system if we have trouble with the collection?
Mr. Letts?
It would just be through the legal system. Yeah, it cannot go on your taxes.
Thank you. Councillor Braithwaite, questions?
Yeah, thank you. Just going on what one of the letter writers wrote about in regards to the annual business license fee of $100 plus $1.50 per square foot. And then they point out that a 400 square foot home would have to pay $6,000 a year plus $100 for a business license. Can you talk, what other municipalities use this system? And can you talk around the why that system was brought forward for us?
Mr. Bull.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Yeah, it was definitely not our intent to charge those kind of high fees when we were drafting the bylaws, and I mentioned that we were expediting this, so we should have circled this back to this one. We were imagining that would apply only to bedrooms, but it might be easier if I would revisit this. A flat fee would probably be easier to administer for everybody involved. Yeah, so apologies for that confusion or seemingly exuberant fees. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That makes a lot more sense to me to have a flat fee rather than what that would be an exorbitant fee in my books. And then the other question that came up from one of the letters was the maximum of 90 days per year. And they said that Victoria has 160 nights, Vancouver has no limit. So can we talk about where the number of 19 nights per year came from and whether that could be changed as well?
Go ahead, Ms. Reynolds.
Sure. Yeah, we looked at the 160-day, or sorry, the 130-day example from Victoria, is sort of reflecting just under that 6-month period. Again, tied to someone's principal residence and the fact that they're as a principal residence that they're supposed to be there 6 months a year, and the 90 days, tying it to linking it more closely with the provincial legislation, again, really kind of reflecting the accessory that council's direction appeared to be, recommending that it is in fact an accessory use and not wanting to encourage longer continuous stays by hosts. And so we discussed the 90 days as a sort of a shorter duration in order to minimize the potential impacts to neighbors, and that it still allowed people to be able to rent their place out if they're on vacation for a few weeks, multiple weeks a year.
Anything else, Councillor Braithwaite?
Just one other question. And that is around the fire and life safety inspections. And I just wonder, is that the fire and life safety inspections, does that go along with what our with what the building code is for buildings? And so would these houses have to have anything extra than what they would normally have to have as just a regular house?
Not sure who to give that to. Is Mr. Bull?
Yeah, thank you, through you, Mayor. We borrowed from the commercial businesses and the business review for business that are commercial, and in this case we felt it was relevant because of inviting people into people's homes, but we don't know where they getting housed, so to say, for the night, even though it's just one night. So we felt that it's probably prudent to have a look at that. Now, I don't think our intent is to do a full building code review. It's really that the fire safety matters and high-level review. So we would be looking for essentials. That said, we do reference approved dwelling unit as well. So I would also anticipate that the building official and the fire safety prevention officer, they would look at is the room approved for a bedroom, right? That there's some features of a bedroom that need to be in place. So that would be a fairly limited scope of that review. Thank you.
Thank
you. Councillor Watson, then Appleton. And Councillor Appleton had his question answered, it sounds like, so I'll go to Councillor Smart.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, to staff. My question is just with regards to, and this may be more for the consultant, but can you elaborate on how the bylaw ensures that secondary suites and carriage houses that aren't long-term rentals, so if somebody owns a house, they have a secondary suite, they don't rent it out, they have a carriage house, they don't rent it out, that we're ensuring that those can't be used as SDRs. When I read the consultant's report, it seems really clear to me that the intent has been captured, but when I actually read through the actual bylaws, the only thing I picked up on was that there have to be approved dwelling units, and I'm just wondering if staff can just elaborate on the sort of diligence of making sure that we're not opening up our secondary suites and carriage houses to long-term rental loss. Thank you.
Mr. Bull?
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Yes, it is also spelled out in the principal residence definition, because that's where we specifically point to the host being an individual that resides for a longer period of time in a calendar year than any other place in that approved dwelling unit. So that's definitely the intent, but if there's a desire to clarify that, we can definitely add clarifying wording to our bylaw language. Thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor Smart.
Yeah, thank you. I'm through to staff, and I acknowledge this is a gray area, but potentially an owner of a house, might have an accessory dwelling unit that they occupy as an artist studio for most of the year, but then in the summer they decide to short-term rental, and there's going to be some gray areas like that, and so I'm just wondering if staff could clarify kind of how they deal with those kind of gray areas where somebody feels that their principal residence is all the parts, is the secondary suite, is the carriage house, because they feel like they occupy all of that most of the time. If that could just be clarified, that would be great. Thank you.
Mr. Bull, or should we give that to?
Thank you, Mayor. The more I think about it, I see some complications, but I think it's one of the pieces where we would like to be a little bit different than the provincial approach, because the province does allow for the principal residence and a secondary suite or ADU. But I think the intent that we've understood from council is that this is about the principal resident itself in their unit, not in the other unit that might be on site. So we would need to look at some clarifying wording there. I think it's already implied and definitely meant the way we set up the definitions. But there are some odd scenarios possible. You mentioned the art studio, but there could also be a secondary suite that is actually not currently rented out, because for whatever reason it's not rented out. That's a bit of another odd option. However, that said, I think if we got the council's intention right, then the current definitions are meant to be the short-term rental is limited to somebody's principal residence, whatever it may be, if they owner or a tenant, doesn't matter, but it's in their residence. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Mayor. I remembered my question, and it's kind of along the same lines. This is for Mr. Bull. In the report, it suggests that one of the scenarios that might be amenable, and I inferred that it was supposed to be covered by this regulatory scheme, is a homeowner with a secondary suite who has a university student or a college student who's absent in the summer. But the way you're describing this, they would not be allowed to actually short-term rental that space because it is not their principal residence. But it seemed to me that that was quite a reasonable suggestion, that somebody who has a tenant for 10 months of the year might actually be able to want to short-term rental it for the balance of the 2 months, given their investment in creating that space. So how might you amend the scheme or the definitions to allow that very specific situation?
Just for clarification, just want to confirm that is prohibited under the proposed wording that's here, and then to the question of what would that look like to change. Mr. Bull?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Yes, that would be outside of the intent. There's probably two directions. Either we need to come up with more precise wording, but it also will become a bit more complex. And part of this effort was to have an initial program that was straightforward to implement. Another option would be to allow for secondary suites, for example, to be rented by the owner of the house, even though that could be a rental unit. But that's a bit of a more complex discussion. And there is the option to explore more details about short-term rentals through the home-based business regulation review that is rolled into the OCP project. So yeah, a couple of options for council if you choose to pursue that. Thank you.
Anything else, Councillor Watson?
Yes, I just wanted to explore a little bit more the rationale for the limitation to 90 days, given that the principal residence must be established, which is basically half the year. That would leave, with the 90 days, it would leave large chunks of time where that we were prohibiting somebody from renting out their property, even though they clearly established by law that it was their principal residence. And I just would ask you to comment again on 90 days versus, say, 120, or City of Victoria's 160, which is closer to half of the year.
Sure. Do I like to give that to Mr. Wool? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think further to what Ms. Reynolds was also pointing out, we see it as part of having a small initial program that can be launched pretty quick. And it's something that maybe we could get some experience with to see what the uptake might be. However, that number 90 is a bit of, we toyed with 60, 120, or maybe using the Victoria number, or you could go all the way to 180 to get to exactly, well, 182, I guess, days. So that's a bit of, council can weigh in on that, but that was the intent behind the 90 days. Thank you.
Thank you. Don't see other hands up for questions, so I'm about to go to the public just to get any additional comments or questions. But I had a couple of quick questions before we go there. Appreciate the clarity on the simple business license. There's some requirements here in terms of the proof of ownership, principal residence, inspection to meet minimum health and life safety requirements. I'm just curious. A lot of that seems to be very heavy in terms of staff time requirements. And I'm just curious about, again, these are all run through third-party businesses that require their own pieces. Has there been consideration given just to essentially a declaration where we have people who are applying for a business license essentially declare that this is a legal suite or unit that is, and if we have a robust fine program where if they're not in compliance that they get fined, really we just sort of essentially leave it to them to sign off on it and take ownership of the compliance. And so just question here about in terms of a process basis, can we look at this more from a declarative model as opposed to a inspection and taking on the responsibility of checking some of these aspects? Give that to probably Mr. Bull, and you can hand it off to somebody else if you wish.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. There would be a different, more of a limited model where the whole business licensing or the inspection particularly would fall away. There are examples where we rely on that. In the case of secondary suites, for example, there is a declaration that's filled out, but only once at the time of the building permitting, where the owner declares that they're the owner of the house and they're not away too long for time of year. Something like that could be considered here. It does put the onus more on the owner, and there may be some liability implications. I'm not an expert in that, but down the road, say if something unfortunate were to happen, the district might still be called on for whatever the case may be. I think we were going by some of the examples. Ms. Reynolds could give you more details on that if you like. We were mainly looking at the Sydney example because it was most closely aligned with our intent, but definitely something we could consider. There were also Langford comes to mind if I'm not mistaken, where they rely entirely on the provincial regime, and that's another option that is much more hands-off. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Ms. Reynolds, is there anything do you want to add to that in terms of the ability to maybe just leave this more as a declarative model with business license as opposed to inspections and verification?
I guess further, it's again, it seems to be sort of the the jurisdiction is making the decision to how involved they want to get into the process. And I think with Sydney, for example, they have an initial inspection, and then the subsequent inspections are by declaration. So then it's just that first check. I've seen other models where it's an inspection is every 5 years. And again, it's just really the concern with people who are coming into a home where they don't necessarily know the escape routes, or, you know, ensuring that there's the fire extinguishers and the various CO2 monitors and so on, that they are in fact there. But yeah, it seems to me that jurisdictions are choosing to take a more rigorous approach, and others are not.
Very much for that. And my only other question was just related to the around this question of principal residence versus ADU versus suite model. Would it be possibly a practical approach just to limit the number of days per lot? So whether or not it was the principal resident or the ADU or a suite, but basically the limitation was tied to the total lot, and then that would be divided up essentially for the different units. Yeah, Ms. Reynolds?
Through the mayor, and Robert Lutz might be able to speak to it, but I think it might be, in terms of the monitoring on the provincial portal, depending on how that is identified, because if it's just by address, for example, that might not catch that it's a secondary suite. But maybe, Mr. Lutz, if you're able to speak to that, what it looks like on the portal.
Yeah. Mr. Lutz?
Through the chair, I believe the portal would capture that information. It's broken down by address and host, so I think it would capture it.
Okay. That's just a thought I had. Okay. I think that's all it for questions. So I'm going to just open up the floor to members of the public. We have one member in the audience. I'm not sure if you're here for this particular item or not. But I think I recognize a couple of names online of people who have expressed interest in the past. So if you could use the application, the reaction or react button in the app to raise your hand, that would be appreciated. You can also probably just turn on your video and raise your physical hand, and should be able to see you online that way as well. Is there anybody online that would be is interested in asking questions or making comments to council at this time? I have Tim Taddy online. If raised his hand, if you can just unmute yourself and formally give your name and municipality of residence, please.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, and please just speak a little bit louder would be helpful.
Okay, I'm Tim Taddy here, and thank you for providing the opportunity to do this. Tim Taddy of Oak Bay. Remotely, I'm looking after little ones, which is why I'm speaking a little quietly. First of all, I want to thank council for trying to tackle this problem and for appreciating that short-term rentals do impact long-term housing. And I'm heartened to see that the intent of council is to limit the short-term rental to just the owner or the tenant of that particular unit within the dwelling or on the property. However, I don't think that's clear in the bylaw at all. I'm fairly well versed in reading bylaws, but I'm still very much a lay person, and to me, I think it could be easily interpreted both in that and in parts of the report, respectfully, and also in the information that's been out in the public, that somebody could have a suite or an auxiliary suite elsewhere on the property, and instead of renting that to a long-term tenant, just run a 90-day short-term rental. So I think council's intent, I'm heartened by it, but I really think this bylaw needs to be reworked, and the information and education around the bylaw needs to be reworked to make it really clear that it is only the occupant, the legal occupant, the principal resident of that space that can rent out the STR. Furthermore, we have a real history of underestimating the demand for this sort of thing. We've of course prohibited it forever, and it's been virtually ignored by homeowners and others, and we've been very lax. And even though you have access to the portal to see the number of days they're renting, a citizen doesn't. And how on earth does Oak Bay know whether somebody is, for example, booking 90 days a year, but quietly doing other days? Like, you can't expect citizens to be sitting in lawn chairs counting the number of tenancies that go on. And I think you just don't want to underestimate the financial incentives, and you don't want to underestimate the ingenuity, because they've demonstrated it across the world in getting around bylaws. So for me, I like Oak Bay to follow the lead of the 3 local municipalities in our regional district that have prohibited them. I'd like to continue that. I understand the motivation in this, but the discussion even around the table tonight shows the complexity of trying to translate your intentions into a bylaw. I think it's almost impossible. And one other feature that came to mind during your discussion is when we're limiting it to the occupant as you're intending, please keep in mind that that is a non-supervised short-term rental. They might be in France or Kelowna, and the tenants are downstairs. It's going to cause more problems for police and noise and whatnot. So, because it's not going to be managed because the people are upstairs and the short-term rental's down. So I think you have a much more complex issue than this bylaw is an attempt, but please get it right. Take your time. It's very hard to reverse these things, and if we're not already, we're fast becoming a Whistler or West Vancouver, where the people who work at our businesses, our hospital, our schools, and in fact the municipality can't afford to live in it. And we should be doing everything to avoid that. So thank you for listening to me, and thank you for your efforts.
Thank you very much, Mr. Taddy. Any idea what's going on with our feedback in here? It seems anyway, we'll try and manage it in the room. If you could just lower your hand, Mr. Taddy, now in the app. I don't have control of that. Anybody else wish to address council this evening? Okay, I'm giving you an opportunity in case people, there we go. I saw the name that had written a letter, so I assume probably wanted to speak. Ms. Connors, please state your name and municipality of residence for the record, please.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Connors, and I'm a resident of Oak Bay. Just confirming my audio is okay?
Your audio is very quiet. Can you speak up a little bit?
Okay.
She's just going to swatch off her headset just to see if that fixes it. It is a little bit better. We can probably turn up some audio in the room here a little bit as well. Yes, just speak as clear as you can, please.
I'll try and chat with everything. Otherwise, I'd be there. Yeah, thanks very much for your ongoing efforts to bring this issue forward. I have to say, as you know, I've been very motivated to bring this issue forward. I'm excited to see some of the bylaw amendments being proposed. I don't need to reiterate all.
Sorry, Ms. Connors, we have a few people in the room here can't quite hear what you're saying. Are you I know it's late at night. Are you able to speak up a little bit, or perhaps if you just turn the microphone on your headset around, maybe you can speak directly into the microphone. That might help.
Yeah, one moment. Is that a little bit better?
It is a little bit better.
Okay. My apologies. Do you want me to continue, or do you want me to try my headset again?
Maybe try the headset again and just put the microphone as close to your mouth as possible. Technology is always so much fun. If that's the best I can do, just please go ahead and we'll do our best to hear you.
Okay, apologies for that. Well, I'll try and be brief just in case you can't hear what I'm saying. I just wanted to reiterate some of the things that I had shared in writing. Some of the comments as well that came up tonight around pegging some of this to commercial rates. And I think, for me, I'd like to just remind Mayor and Council of the impetus behind this, at least from my perspective, which was really around affordability for young families. And, creating something that is not a major financial barrier to make this work on occasion should be part of the considerations. I was very pleased to hear that the $1.50 per square foot was maybe an oversight, so that's encouraging, but also just wanted to highlight that really this should be coming back to affordability for families to find a way to stay in the community by having occasional use. The other two pieces I'll just comment on briefly. One is just the commentary around proof of ownership, just reminding folks that when you do register with the province, there are mechanisms through that portal that the province has taken responsibility for. So this is something that they do that doesn't need to be downloaded to municipalities. So I know it's a concern and it's a valid one, but I just wanted to remind Mayor and Council that this is something that is set up through the existing centralized structures that the province has set up. And then the third one is just more of a question, perhaps for Ms. Reynolds. I just want to be really clear that homes that have existing legal secondary suites, but wish to rent their principal residence that is part of on occasion, wouldn't be precluded under the proposed bylaw. And that's certainly our situation. And it wasn't clear to me with the language that's been proposed that would necessarily be the case. So that's a bit more of a question.
Thank you, Ms. Connors. And to Ms. Reynolds, did you have a chance? Could you hear that question? The question was just to clarify, to confirm that people who have a principal residence but have a secondary suite occupied by a tenant are still able to rent out their principal residence.
Yes, that's certainly the intent, that the owner's principal residence could be rented out. If that is what she did in fact mean, and not renting out both units. That wasn't clear to me.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you, Ms. Connors. I appreciate that additional feedback. Are there anybody else who wishes to speak to council on this matter? Not seeing any other hands popping up. I am going to come back to the council table. We have some recommendations here in front of us. I did hear some questions and pieces around the language of the bylaw and perhaps some tweaks. I just want to ask a question of this, because I think, again, a little bit of clarification of what the intention here is. It sounds like the principal owner of any unit and a renter who has the authorization of an owner are both authorized to have 90 days. Is that correct? So if the primary residence is a renter or an owner, they have the ability to rent their unit up to 90 days? Mr. Bowl?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Yes, 90 days per short-term rental, right? So there could be an owner on the site. There could be also a tenant in another unit on site, because there, on most lots, you could have up to 4 units, which is a bit complicating things, because theoretically you could have multiple operators. But we think in most cases, at the moment at least, that should arrange itself at the moment. But that's currently how the bylaws laid out. Thank you.
Okay, so just for my clarification, a house with a secondary suite, the owner could rent out their principal resident for up to 90 days. The tenant could rent it out for 90 days as well, with the permission of the landlord. That is correct, okay. So every unit can have 90 days for all intents and purposes on a lot. Okay, rental or stasis. That was just for that clarification. Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Braithwaite.
I'm sorry, so I'm glad you brought this up, because I did not realize that, because I would have thought that a renter was not an owner and so could not then use their rental place for for a short-term rental. But now, what you're saying is that they actually can, with the permission of the owner of the actual house.
Yes, it's a principal residence.
In actual fact, there could be 180 days in one house that could go to short-term rental.
So, yes, there's up to 4 units per lot. So theoretically, all those units would each have up to 90 days if they desired that. Councillor Green?
Are you wanting questions right now?
Yeah, I think there's no motion. It's 9:53, we're
I know,
getting
I
late,
know.
so I just want to move us forward. I'm getting the sense that there's still some lack of comfort with sort of advancing this as written, because we're still teasing out some of the implications of some of this.
Yeah, that's what I was going to actually say. I am not comfortable with some of the aspects. It is very complex. I appreciate what staff has done. It's a lot of work, and I want to acknowledge that work. And it was at our behest at the time. But when you actually get into the weeds, there are some daunting issues here that I'm not sure we intended. So there are unintended consequences potentially, and it may require more oversight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I'm there's what we have in front of us. If people, I would suggest that if we're going to ask for changes, we just send it back to staff with some specific changes and some clarification of what's expected. You saw the floor. Go ahead, Councillor Green.
I'm happy to make that motion if that's agreeable with you.
So I would just maybe just make a couple of notes so that we're very clear about what it is that we're sending back and asking for changes. I don't want to just say go back and fix this. I want to say, limit the fee to a fixed fee structure, limit it to the number of days per unit, those kind of things, so that we can give some clear direction to staff back, I think, a little bit. Granted, there's some work that could be done with a consultant, but I think there's just the more clarity we can provide, the better.
I will spare you the pain of trying to do this on the fly and listen to other colleagues. They may have better ideas.
Sure, I saw Councillor Watson's hand and then Councillor Smart.
Yes, if I could just comment, my overall view of this is that I think that if principal residence is identified as a foundational principle, that the scheme could be less complex than it is. We could take out some of the requirements, because I think that, personally speaking, when I think about somebody and their principal residence, it's in their best interest for it to be managed well, taken care of, not have rowdy tenants, and putting on these other requirements, which are going to be hard or impossible to enforce, just make a more complicated scheme than it needs to be. And so, for example, if I were going to be suggesting how to change this, I would be taking out things like getting strata council's permission for occupancy. I would leave that up to the strata council to figure out what's going on with who's living in their building, as opposed to making it a responsibility of Oak Bay in this scheme. I would remove the requirement about number of sleeping units, because the number of people who can sleep in a bedroom, again, I think it's in the interest of the principal resident to think about how is my property being used and maintained, because they don't want it overused, or they're taking on the liability for the things that go wrong. And I guess also with the length of time regulation, I think that if principal residence, it's defined in a couple of, one provincial and a national statute around occupancy and tax status for housing and what have you. It's 183 days of the year that you have to be in the place. And if that's the case, why do we really care about the rest? Because if this really is about supporting affordability, maybe we can be more lax and not so prescriptive and just see how things fall. So I think that we're by making the scheme more complex, we're making it more difficult to understand and more difficult to enforce.
Councillor, actually, I need a motion to extend the meeting to 10:45.
Move it to extend the meeting to 10:45?
I think that's how long it's going to take, unless we can get through this quicker. Is there a seconder for that? Seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed, none opposed? Appreciate some people may have to leave, but hopefully not. Go ahead, Councillor Smart.
Yeah, thank you. With regards to what we're asking staff to come back with, I guess my first instinct was just potentially a few options to choose from that would be slight variations. And I guess hearing the conversation around the table, my main concern is any impact to long-term housing. And so I guess like one of the options I would like to have some more time to reflect on is should we even reduce the number of days to 60 days so that the economic formula of I'm not going to even rent my secondary suite for the whole year because I can make the same amount of money in 3 months in the summer, we start to shift that economic formula so that by having even less days, it means that people are going to be like, no, I really do have to rent my apartment because I'm going to make more money renting my apartment. So I guess that's one of the options I'd like to see. The other one, and I hate to suggest this from an equity standpoint, but would it just clean it up so much if we basically said we're not allowing short-term rentals and ADUs and secondary suites only in houses? And I don't feel totally comfortable with the suggestion, but at the same time, I'm just trying to clean this up in such a way that we're not going to lose out on this type of housing that we're trying to build for long-term rentals. So I guess what I would love to see is for staff to just take a little bit more time to come up with 2 or 3 options that kind of address some of the things that have set around the table. My biggest concern is any impact to long-term rental housing. Thanks.
Thank you. So I'm going to suggest that we refer this matter back to staff and I think actually the approach of coming up with some options of each of these so we can maybe just walk through it by resolution and resolve them might be a good way of going about it. So not maybe draft a bylaw, but just say, you know, here's some options for licensing fees, here's some options for with or without ADUs. We've talked about it, I think, pretty thoroughly tonight, but I think a bit of a structure in that way would help us have that discussion and debate. So maybe I'll seek a motion to that effect, is to refer this back to staff and just bring back options based on the conversation here tonight. I just want to make sure that's Mr. Bowl. I just want to make sure if we give that direction, I don't think we want to bylaws redrafted. I think just taking some of the options in terms of fees and ADUs, yes or no, kind of pieces, lay them out in a structure that allows us to have a conversation with the existing report. I think is what we're asking for here, not a fulsome, here's 1,000 different ways of cutting this, just to kind of give us a framework for debate on the options. So I'm going to seek a motion to that effect, essentially referring this back to staff to come back with those options. Councillor Green?
I'm happy to make that motion. Is there clarity for staff on the referral back to staff? Do you have clarity on some of the issues, or do they need to be articulated?
Mr. Bull?
I made some notes of some of the things through the mayor, of the things that were mentioned so far, and but if I understand correctly, the mayor, you're going to craft this in the coming remainder of the meeting, or but up to you, up to what the council needs. I can work with the notes I got or with specific motions. So thank you.
Yeah, I don't know that we're quite prepared to make specific motions. So I think we're just going to look at each of these aspects and just structure it. Like, we could do it now in a sense of going through the proof of residency, et cetera. It's laid out well in the report, but I think if we can kind of distill that into kind of here's some of the 3 options that were discussed in the meeting, and we can kind of work through that quickly to kind of, as a council, decide what the priorities are. So I think I see the motion I would ask right now is just, I think Councillor Green made, is just to refer this back to staff with that to come back to.
I will move that we refer this back to staff for further work.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any other discussion on this, just to make sure that we're clear on? I think the only thing that wasn't captured for me was just like mechanisms by which, and I think again it could be part of the declaration or other aspect, but clear contact for incidents where, cause the biggest issue for people is noise, and if someone parks in front of the driveway or some other sort of aspect, and so it's a sort of nuisance aspect. So there's a way for people to notify the owner, the principal resident, of the problems. I think might be a piece of that as well, if that's possible. So yeah, that's the only other thing I think that wasn't covered here. Go ahead, Councillor Smart.
Yeah, thank you. And just kind of expanding on that, I did want to just take a moment to mention that I did like, there was a mention in here, I think it was Camosun that had like a $500 deposit that you put in for, bylaw follow-up. And I just thought that felt like a really interesting model that I'd like to consider, because I think it gives people an incentive of not wanting bylaw infractions against them. And it sort of balances out the expense of our staff time versus providing that allowance. So that's an option I would love to, talk about and consider around the council table when we're looking at revising the various fees and stuff like that. And then the other thing I just wanted to mention is I feel like we're so close in this. Like, I just want to give the feedback that for me, this feels like 90% there. But there's some very important, I think, details we need to consider.
Thank you, Councillor Watson.
Yes, I just wondered if we could, in giving this back to staff, there's a lot of things mentioned here, but there were some principles emerging, and if we agreed to them, then maybe that would help. Councillor Smart suggested one of the principles might be ensuring that we don't lose rental supply that we're working hard to create. The mayor mentioned simplicity around using a declaration model as opposed to a provide evidence or inspection model. That seems to be a principle that would help to bring us there. And I just wondered if there was, those were two things that stood out to me, but I wonder if there was anything else that we could add as clarity there for staff, like time frame or whatever. Is there something else there? You mentioned that kind of economic, Councillor Smart mentioned sort of economic incentives, and like why you would pick a lower number of days, because there is some balance between trying to keep things available for renters as opposed to being more attractive to rent them out to other people. So I'm just asking that question.
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I'm just not sure we're quite ready to give those entire principles. I think I heard those same themes, but I think at the end of the day, I'll have to come back with some things. And there were some things here, like there were the questions around, should it be a business license? Seems to have been agreed upon essentially by default. Should the money keep going to the MRDT for now? I think that seemed to be agreement. Like, nobody raised it, so I think we're kind of moving forward on those areas. So things that weren't raised, I'm assuming, are sort of essentially acquiesced to. Go ahead, Councillor Green.
Thank you. And yes, I agree with my colleagues' comments to date. I just wanted to say that I am concerned about the tenant aspect, that a tenant could actually also sublet, and I think we need clarity on that. I would not support that. I think it should be the principal home and the homeowner that conducts the process. And the other thing is, and I'll reiterate because Councillor Smart also mentioned it, I don't want short-term rentals to in any way compromise our ability to provide long-term housing, because the long-term housing really is a core principle. So that's just, a comment. But the tenant issue is a problem. And the only other one is just a question around enforcement. If we create something terribly complex, how complex will it be to enforce? And I guess that's a question for bylaw enforcement, but I don't want to make that role any more complicated as well. So that's just another side comment. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Patterson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And noting that there are only 21 of these, supposedly, in the district, I would be interested in knowing, for inspections on 21 units, what would be the staff requirement of time? Because I think certainly when some new units are developed, they already have an occupancy, so that's an easy do. But if there is no recent occupancy of a unit, I would be interested in what the staff requirement of time would be to just inspect those 21 units.
I might just put the question to Mr. Letts or Mr. Bull. What is the approximate amount of time? What is the workload impact of asking people for these inspections to happen? And I think we would anticipate there'd be an increase because it would make it a little bit simpler with the current process to do it. But go ahead, Mr. Bull.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, through you, for the proposed program. yeah, definitely the inspection process makes it more like the commercial licenses. So there was a work plan impact that we tried to comment on in the staff report, and it will take a while. Ideally, we have about 6 months to work for that, because there's also the regular day-to-day work, of course. So in itself, on its own, every particular license is not, I'm pulling a bit of a number out of the air, but somewhere between 5 to 10 hours of staff time, whereas without an inspection, it's much more of a paper exercise of just a few hours. So that's the difference that you're talking about. But times 21 on top of the existing work, it starts to add up. So thanks.
Okay, so the motion on the floor is essentially refer this back to just essentially structure this in a way for us to come back and do that. But you've heard some of the comments made. Mr. Bull? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I hope you allow me to make this comment or kind of a recap.
Please.
I'm wondering if what I'm hearing from council is, besides the specific comments I heard and we took notes of, is that you would rather see this program a bit more simplified, easier to administer, maybe perhaps also a bit more limited in scope, if that helps to simplify things. And that's kind of the general direction that I would work with, if I understood you correctly. Thank you.
I think that's a general direction I'm hearing here as well, yes. But I think we just need to have a little bit of sort of A, B, or ABC kind of for each of those. We can just kind of go yes, yes, no, yes, and then I think we can resolve this fairly quickly and then resolve the bylaws themselves. So the motion right now is essentially refer this back to staff with that direction. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed? That carries. I know we were hoping to resolve this tonight, but I think like most things that when you don't know much about it, the solution seems simple, and the more you tease it apart, the more complicated it gets. And so here we are with, I think, trying to move this forward expeditiously, but recognizing there's some complexity. I'm going to move on now to the loan authorization bylaws. We have Ms. LaChance again, who's our Director of Finance and Asset Management. Welcome back.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. The report before you presents 2 borrowing bylaws for the first 3 readings of each bylaw. The bylaws are being brought forward now in relation to the 2025 through 2029 5-year financial plan, bylaw number 4899. The approved plan included borrowings specifically in relation to road reconstruction and storm sewer rehabilitation programs. The bylaws set forth borrowing across all 5 years of the plan to coincide with the 5-year expiry date of borrowing bylaws. The total borrowing specified in each bylaw is not to exceed $13,250,000 for road reconstruction and $12,950,000 for storm sewer rehabilitation. As per plan, works will be funded partially from reserves and partially from borrowing. Analysis included in the report is to assist council on decisions regarding the staff recommended debt term of 15 years and the use of the approval-free zone approval process for these bylaws. Council could choose to change the term and/or direct a different approval process. Looking forward, in preparation for other borrowing or funding decisions to come for council, work is underway on phase 2 of the comprehensive asset management plan development. We timed that work to support the 2026 planning cycle. Staff are currently developing a long-term asset investment plan and completing facility condition index assessments on all district facilities. This work is integral to advancing the longer-term view of service delivery asset infrastructure investment over time. This work will make possible the development of longer-term financial strategies. The bylaws before council this evening have been developed to advance borrowing as per the financial plan. They are aligned with the recently approved debt management policy, financial planning guidelines, and the existing reserve and surplus policy. The bylaws, as mentioned, are here for 3 readings by council, and I'm happy to take any questions at this time.
Thank you very much, Ms. LaChance. Questions from members of council? Go ahead, Councillor Patterson. Councillor Appleton.
Yeah, I will just make a very brief comment, and I have run this by the staff, but just some of the magnitude of this borrowing is the magnitude of it is large for Oak Bay, considering that we have not done any of this. And so I thank you for the comments about the comprehensive asset management, but I think it would also be good if we can work towards in that providing feedback to the community on what we're accomplishing, because to just borrow money to fix things is, I mean, I think most of the community, I think we have the message that is out there and it's strong now, but I think it would be nice to be able to also report on positive progress that is being made. So hopefully if we can work towards that too with the asset management report, I think that that would be great. Thank you. And I do support what has been presented tonight. I think we all know that it's necessary.
Councillor Appleton, questions?
Thank you, Worship, and through you to staff. There you go. I guess I have a couple of questions that are based on sort of the follow-up procedure for aligning or essentially sequencing and laying out borrowing as a follow-on from the 5-year financial plan. So the 5-year financial plan outlines a number of different categories for borrowing, which are outlines and approves a number of categories for borrowing, which are laid out in this staff report. I guess I was, and staff clearly identified at that time that as individual borrowing bylaws came before council, that council would have the opportunity to comment at that time. Obviously, we're at that junction point. I guess what I anticipated would happen would be, and we didn't talk about this at that time specifically, so with, respecting that was not specifically laid out at the time of financial plan debate. But I was under the impression, or would have sort of anticipated that there would be a more holistic discussion about the deployment of debt out of the 5-year financial plan. So there's a number of different components. They can be sequenced in different ways. They could be theoretically prioritized in different ways. Does all the borrowing happen at once? Does it happen in a sequenced way based on certain milestones that we're looking to accomplish? So can staff speak to kind of like why this one now? Like sort of there's obviously a driving factor of like this is the component that's been elected to go forward first in this format. How does it relate to a conversation, as Councillor Patterson has alluded to, an overall conversation with the public with respect to taking on debt as a community? So is there a larger strategic sequencing of borrowing that isn't spoken to in this report?
Is the chance?
Yes, thank you. Through your worship, I appreciate the opportunity to try my best on that. I would agree that with the borrowing that has been laid out, just even within the 5-year financial plan, and the fact that the sustainable infrastructure replacement plan identified 170 million in borrowing, that taking a strategic and program approach to issuing debt would be ideal. I would suggest that that's definitely direction I can receive today to come back and unpack debt over to multiple debt issues over time. These two bylaws are coming forward now in relationship to the financial plan, as mentioned. The spending is the first year of spending, so it is the only debt identified that would be coming forward at this time. The additional debt that has been identified in the 5-year financial plan is up for council direction. If there is any sequencing or reprioritization of that, that can be discussed, and as I mentioned, can come back as part of a more holistic look at a debt program. The required nature of these replacement programs makes them a very standard traditional borrowing model. So as you'll see in the report before you, the only decision points are really about 15 years and whether or not it goes through the approval-free zone. For some of the other borrowings, there will be maybe a discussion about how much borrowing and reserves will be used for projects like Carnarvon or the public safety building. Those are two significant borrowings that council will be considering in future, but it is not planned for now. It is future spending, and we will be coming back to council on those loan authorizations.
Councillor Appleton?
Oh, thank you, Your Worship. And yeah, appreciate that answer. I guess are we looking to, I guess, and this has not been directed by council, but I am of the mind that, an overall, I guess this represents somewhat of a, as was mentioned, the total amount of borrowing is significant and represents a bit of a significant policy and cultural shift for the district, and departs, fairly significantly from previous strategy. And I think we all understand the need for it. But I'm leaning towards, because it's so significant, I am leaning towards some sort of more a communications avenue and a discussion with the community about what the nature of the borrowing is and what the outcome product is. So, and I'm just generally of that mind. And like I say, I guess maybe I anticipated that was an intermediary piece between the 5-year financial plan and the borrowing bylaws. But again, council did not specifically direct such, but I sort of envisioned something of that nature to have that discussion with the community. Because it is my opinion that we're reaching the limits of what this individual tax base can shoulder in order to make up for the underinvestment of the past. I think everybody understands that, but I think we're definitely at that point. So I just want to ask one other question, Your Worship, and it's with respect to the work plan. And with these two specific items, we're talking about sort of executing engineering work plans, and we've seen solid information from staff talking about, infrastructure replacement priorities and those types of things. And we've done a lot of work staff have done a lot of work to capture the nature of the problem that we're facing. So is there, obviously the number that is proposed for borrowing is based on projections and layout from staff about priority projects and those kinds of things. Can we speak to, should those not in fact be part of the borrowing bylaw? Like I would like to be able to say to the public, we're borrowing an extensive amount of money to work in these categories. What specific document and what specific priority list are we working off in order to expend those funds?
Ms. LaChance, hand it over to you in terms of those reports.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll just take the opportunity to further expand on my earlier comment about long-term investment plan as part of Phase 2 for the comprehensive asset management plan. We'll be coming back to Council. It will provide that longer-term view of prioritized asset replacement by asset category. These loan authorizations are by asset category, so if that helps Council envision that future work. The prioritization that staff go through will be, the intent with that work with council will be to make that more transparent so that you can understand the condition, capacity, growth implications from the recently approved DCC asset planning work that we did, and also understanding where there's some discretion and where we would need council direction to try to manage expenditures over time. Absolutely embedded in the sustainable infrastructure replacement plan is the concept that catching up is difficult on the community and would need to be spread over time. That plan, in fact, considers how to smooth that with use of reserves and debt, and has recommended the sort of 6 to 8 year increase in reserve transfers, and that brings us very much near a target in the future of sustainable infrastructure funding. So maybe if I could, for the earlier comment about communicating to the community, Council has done significant measures against those earlier plans, committing and following through on those reserve transfers. And so a lot of that information will be updated as we come back in Phase 2 on the asset management work. I hope I've helped. Please clarify if I've missed anything.
Councillor Appleton?
I thank you, Your Worship. Appreciate your indulgence, and I appreciate that context. I guess I would just ask a follow-up, which is not meant to be challenging in any way, shape, or form, but I'm just interested in the sequencing between the phase 2 updated infrastructure management and all of the information that Ms. LaChance has indicated is coming, and I think it's going to be really informative material. Would the borrowing not follow after the, that updated and improved information rather than the other way around? I'm just talking to sequencing here and whether there's a specific rationale for advancing this now with sort of some of the details on the expenditure categories writ large coming afterwards. Like, could those things not be reversed and have the borrowing be directly informed and reference specific elements of the updated infrastructure plan?
Mr. Shantz?
Yes, thank you. Through your worship, the actions both within the 5-year capital plan that's been approved, as well as the financing strategies that we use to balance that 5-year budget, are acting on council's earlier direction with the thorough review and condition that had been assessed at that time. What we look to do now is we look to make sure that there's a way to balance across all asset classes, providing that comprehensive view. So I would say even with that new information, prioritization for any type of borrowing would always be recommended by staff on core replacement, core services such as storm sewer and road reconstruction, so that those replacement programs get on track and use both the reserves that are being saved as well as the debt issues to help fund that over time and help to bridge the gap between different generations.
Councillor Appleton?
Thank you for that. And this may be, I see that Mr. Rennick is online, and I don't know whether this was a question for Mr. Rennick or for Ms. LaChance, but we are in the midst of a multi-year step-up of infrastructure investment, the 2% per year additional infrastructure levy on the tax bill. Just wanted to confirm, I think we are in the second sequence of 5 years. I think we're in year 3 of 5, but I just kind of wanted to confirm. I can't recall exactly how many more years of that 2% levy we're looking at.
Mr. Chance, do you know that off the top of your head?
I thank you through your worship. We've got infrastructure levy increases in the general water and sewer funds separately. In the case of the water and sewer, I believe that's a 6 to 8 year plan that council put in place, and I believe that's actually the 4th year that we're in. I may check that and send an email to council if I'm incorrect and share that publicly. The general fund, I believe that's in the 3rd year.
Okay. Thank you. Just cognizant of time, I'm going to go to have additional hands up for questions. I have Councillor Watson, then Smart, and then I have maybe myself if they haven't been asked, and then Councillor Patterson for a second time. Go ahead, Councillor Watson.
Thank you. This is just a follow-up on Councillor Appleton's consideration that this is coming before the sort of more fulsome plan that explains how all the debt will be, taken on over many years. But would it be fair to say, my reading of your report, to me, I was understanding that this is coming now because there's a work program in 2026, and it's going to take from now until the need for the first draw to actually get this debt in place. And so that here, it's not just that we already have given direction for this, but time is of the essence if we want to be able to continue that capital plan uninterrupted in 2026. Would that be an accurate reading?
Chance?
Yes, thank you. Through your worship, yes, that's accurate. In fact, the spending relates to 2025 in part. Yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Watson, Councillor Smart.
Thank you. Yeah, through you, Meredith, a chance. This is such a great discussion around the table, and I guess have gone from a series of questions in first reading this report to just really feeling like the most important thing is this public engagement journey that we're going to have to be on for the next 5, 10, 15 years. And so my question for Ms. LaChance is that something that staff were planning on undertaking a real sort of session of engagements with the community to bring them along so they don't experience sort of borrowing fatigue right before we need to borrow for our public safety building, and then we have a referendum and they turn it down because they're already tired that we've asked them to borrow 3 times already. Is it part of the report that you discuss coming to us soon that we will also discuss all the public engagement aspects of that and how we will phase the asks and prioritize the asks in such a way that we don't end up in a situation we've just seen the district of Saanich have their residents, turn down their public works yard. And I think we really need to be cognizant of the place of affordability we're at now, the amount of times we're going to borrow, when we're going to have to borrow, and what we do ask for first, and what other kinds of borrowing there might be different options for. So I think there's both as it's been highlighted, a important discussion to have about what we're asking for and when, but also a real sense of bringing the community alongside with us so that we don't end up in a situation with a really important project that we need to do and not have the community alongside supporting the borrowing.
That's probably more of a comment than a question. That's okay.
My question in that was, is that part of the scope that staff was imagining, or do they need some direction from council to really, in a sense, add a project of thorough public engagement? Because I'm hearing around the table that there's some interest in that.
Ms. LaChance?
Thank you, through your worship. I would appreciate that direction, being that if we are utilizing the approval-free zone, it doesn't lend itself to the existing legislation for council to engage. So we would want to be able to talk with council and both envision what that would look like and receive some advice from our internal communication specialists. I'm not one, so I would like that direction to be able to come back and then also incorporate that into the work that we're doing. It also doesn't naturally fit into the long-term planning aspect, but I definitely see it fitting in the financing strategy work that was set to follow. I can receive that direction to advance that work.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just going to ask a couple of quick questions. I'll go back to Councillor Patterson for a second time. Just for total clarification here, we obviously have some reserves available. So instead of at the highest level, I think it's really more for the public listening to this, what's the rationale of starting to draw down or to acquire small amounts of debt right now? Recognize we still do have some reserves. So why not just draw the reserves to absolutely zero and then start looking at borrowing at that point? Ms. LaChance?
Yes, thank you for the question, Your Worship. The reserve balances, you're correct, within the 5-year financial plan. Under previous plans, we're showing those reserves drawing near to zero or very small balances in some restricted reserves. The Sustainable Infrastructure Replacement Plan had contemplated how best to save reserves over time, make use of those reserves by earning interest, purchasing power, keeping the dollars in the taxpayer's pocket as long as possible through the utilization of debt. And so we're really only executing that plan now, and we blend the use of reserves and debt to make sure that some of the non-major capital is funded from reserves, and then we're able to just borrow for those big expenditures. The reserve balances, they don't go down to near zero, but they really do after the 5-year. The total ending reserve balance is around 30 million, whereas it was probably 15 million before this iteration of the 5-year financial plan. 30 million for a district of this size with the asset base that we own by any measure, by any measure of reserve health would be not ideal. So we would look to improve the health of that as we go forward.
Thank you. I think it's just important to understand it is not as simple as just drawing it down and then borrowing. It is a blend and that modeling. Really appreciate your expertise in that blending. And the second question I had was just really, we are borrowing this money from MFA. My understanding is that you don't pay if let's say there was a large influx of development cost charges or something, we wouldn't use that to pay down these debts in that situation. We would typically, because the flexibility isn't there for that, but we could use it to fund additional capital projects. You can't really pay down these debts early, for instance. It is really kind of, we're in that for that time frame. Is that an accurate understanding?
Yes, thank you for the question. There's a few questions in there, I think, and I'll try to grab them all. I think DCCs are an interesting topic to contemplate for this district in particular. We've just now started collecting DCCs. They are restricted use, so they will be required to be spent on specific projects that we identified in the program, and only on the growth portion. The timing of the public safety building, for example, will come before we collect all that money.
Yep.
So that will require the district to borrow, and we will repay that over time from DCCs collected through the future. The repayment of MFA debt is restricted to certain repayment points in time. And so typically the traditional model, which isn't always the case anymore, is a 10-year issue that you're locked in, and there's 5-year renewals thereafter. And at those renewal points, there are options to do early payout.
Great, thank you. And certainly more detail than I thank you for that. But I'm obviously using my own rules, which is that I need that information to make this decision today. Probably not. So I probably shouldn't have asked it. Go ahead, Councillor Patterson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And I will just take a second to say, just remind my colleagues around the council table, they did choose to not set thresholds on reserve funds. And by doing that, we get into some of this discussion because we didn't preset thresholds on those. But I am supportive of what is presented here. I think the 15-year term is appropriate for these core services. And I really think that the directives that we gave were to try and reduce risk on these core services within a 15-year period. So those balance. And I do think we need to get, I know this is a lot for the District of Oak Bay. The magnitude doesn't elude me, but I think we have to get to this scale of funding projects to secure contractors of the nature that we want over a longer period of time. And having the funding in place will be attractive to the bidding process. So I think that will help us. But it really is about reducing that risk over the 15-year term. My only concern, and this is not really a financial question, it would be more for Director Rennick, and that is we have not delivered on the capital projects. We've not delivered what we promised. We've been lagging in actually spending the capital over the last few years. And so what I would like to have some assurance on is our confidence level that if we undertake this borrowing, we actually will be delivering on the capital projects.
Sure, and Ms. Lachance, perhaps, I mean, not to go through them line by line on the project side of things, but these are tied to specific larger, major capital projects, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Progress on these projects in particular is well underway, which gives me the comfort to advance the loan authorization bylaws that they're necessary. I will say that the capital plan is prepared with all of the needs. And it's also a current practice to front load the budget, if you will. It's to advance, if there's major projects, include that expenditure authorization in year one. I think as we move through phase 2, there are a couple of improvements we will be recommending to council, and it'll be up to council if that's how you wish us to prepare it. But I think that you'll see performance against the plan improve as we make those changes. And I also think that the other investments into staffing capacity within the capital planning teams, within the facilities teams, are underway and coming online, and will be impacting also that performance in the future.
Didn't see any other hands for questions, so I'm going to, oh, go ahead, Councillor Appleton, sorry.
Thank you, Worship, and all very useful information. I guess returning to my earlier point with respect to the ongoing contribution to the infrastructure reserve, and this is the overall expenditure for the program outlined in the report, is a combination of both reserve funds and borrowed funds. So in the eventuality, council did, as part of the deliberations when wrangling with a very difficult tax bill, this last past financial plan, we wrangled with the idea that potentially that additional infrastructure levy might be set aside or might be reduced for 1 or more years. Does the overall project budget that's outlined here, should the borrowing go ahead, does it mandate and require that that infrastructure levy continue in subsequent years into its current projected endpoint? Like, are we going to end up compromising our ability, or we'll obviously have an impact on the work plan, but do we fundamentally alter our obligations under any prospective borrowing if our reserve contributions that are considered under the project are reduced by subsequent financial plan deliberations?
Mr. Chance?
Yes, thank you, through your worship. Just to make sure that I've captured that, I believe you're asking about if the reserves were not going to have the projected balances that we are planning currently, would that put at risk the debt issuances? And there are no restriction in terms of the amount of equity that you would need to contribute in issuing. You can borrow up to the entire 100% of your capital costs from the Municipal Finance Authority.
Thank you. So with no other questions, I'm going to just seek first that we just get the report. Oh, I'm sorry. We are required to go to public. My apologies. I have it in big green here, subject to public input. Anybody who's online, we have nobody else in the chambers here at this point, time of night. Anybody online who wishes to speak to item 9.2, the loan authorization bylaws? And I'm going to forbid staff from speaking. Anybody online, again, just make a second call for that. Anybody who wishes to speak to this matter on the agenda? I don't see any hands coming up. This is first we're contemplating first, second, and third reading, and then
move receipt.
reference. So first start off with move receipt, moved and seconded. All those in favor of receipt? Any opposed? None opposed. Last call for public input here before I go to the first and second reading. Not seeing any. Okay, go ahead, please.
That council will give first and second reading to loan authorization road construction program bylaw number 4929 2025.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Councillor Appleton.
Thank you, Worship. So I won't support giving first and second readings to these bylaws, and I will be absolutely, completely crystal clear here that this has nothing to do with the need for the investment. The investment is clearly necessary, and communities called on us to make these infrastructure investments. I favor an approach. I would have made an alternative motion to give this first and second reading, and then develop a communications plan on a holistic approach to borrowing that we can talk to the community about. So I have significant concerns about how we present the sequence of borrowing to the community in a way that they can understand the impact, and that they can really understand what it is, the magnitude and the significance of what it is that the community is taking on. So I absolutely think that this component of the borrowing is critically necessary, but I want to talk about borrowing holistically with the community and include all the components that are laid out in the financial plan. Thank you, Worship.
Thank you. I always like it if people are voting against to explain the rationale why, so thank you for doing that. Any other discussion on reading first and second reading? I will yeah, I don't think I need to speak on this. All those in favor? And opposed? Councillor Appleton opposed.
And I'll move that council give third reading to loan authorization road construction program bylaw number 4929 2025.
Moved and seconded, thank you. I don't usually discuss much after we've done first and second reading. All those in favor and opposed? Councillor Appleton opposed.
I'll move that council give first and second reading to loan authorization storm sewer rehabilitation program bylaw number 4930 2025.
Moved and seconded, thank you. Any other discussion? All those in favor and opposed? Councillor Appleton opposed.
And I'll move that council give third reading to loan authorization storm sewer rehabilitation program bylaw number 4930 2025.
Moved and seconded, thank you. Don't usually debate on third. All those in favor? Any opposed? Councillor Appleton opposed.
And I'll move that council direct staff to return the bylaws to council for adoption following receipt of inspector of municipality approval.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Before I call the question, I just want to thank staff for this. I do agree that this is, as we go through this, it's such a complicated task and hard to put forward in a way that's understandable for the public. So I appreciate Councillor Appleton's points here that we do need to contemplate how we're messaging this and how it's going forward. But I do appreciate that in all the conversations with staff, both the engineering staff and the finance staff, who all have such a passion for asset management and doing this well, that this work is going on and being done in such a professional way. So I just want to express my appreciation for them. With that, I'm going to call the question on the move. All those in favor? Any opposed? Councillor Appleton opposed. We are going to have an extension this time, but I don't want much more than 10 minutes, please.
I'll move that we extend the meeting until 10:55.
Is there a seconder? There's a seconder. I will allow people to leave if they have to. I don't, but this has to be a unanimous vote for it to continue. All those in favor? Any opposed? Not opposed. Sorry, Councillor Smart, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, thank you. I was just hoping to bring a motion arising based on the request for direction tonight, should there be some with regards to public engagement. So I'd like to bring a motion arising to direct staff to bring forward an engagement strategy, public engagement strategy to communicate borrowing options.
So the motion is to direct staff to come forward with a strategy.
A public engagement strategy. I mean, essentially just to bring back to when we next discuss this, a sort of parallel conversation around bringing the public along with us and making sure that we're being transparent and making sure that we bring to the public options where there are options.
So before I take a seconder, I'm just going to ask the question of staff, just because I know there's obviously multiple touch points where we have pieces. So to that point, I mean, I think this is a complicated aspect of it. It's part of the financial planning, part of asset planning, part of our budgeting and pieces. I just maybe ask the question: is that something that we could contemplate as part of one of those processes? I'm just trying to get a sense here, like what's sort of in the works, because I think what appears to be missing, at least for a couple of council, just to give clarification, is to articulate the why of the borrowing and what it looks like over time. Ms. LaChance?
I think what I'd like to share with council through your worship is that there's formal requirements for public engagement, and we wouldn't have those same bounds in this case. So what we'd be considering is a communication strategy, and we would develop that just like we would the communication strategy around the Sustainable Infrastructure Replacement Plan, is that it was a very meaningful document for the community and guided decision-making over multiple years. Very important that the public can interface and understand that document. So as I understand it, there was a communication campaign that assisted the public with understanding how that was going to impact decisions, the district, what those measures meant, So rather than it just being the financial plan gets approved and has an engagement period set, it's ongoing communication. It would be useful to use that opportunity to bring back a communication strategy to council to help them better understand the sequencing ahead as planned, even before we have the long term. But I suspect the direction I'll receive tonight will be to bring it back alongside that longer term view. But I think all in time before we advance any other loan authorizations.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get a sense of, like, it's a motion, I think, we do obviously want to make sure that we're communicating well with the public, that we do all that pieces. I'm just trying to get a sense if the motion is necessary or if it's helpful to have that direction, that we would like to have that communication piece, or if it's essentially work underway that would come back as part of that.
Yeah, and so thank you through your worship. I appreciate the opportunity to clarify. So I did think it beneficial to receive the direction because it is an opportunity to enhance the work that we were planning.
Okay, and so the motion here is to come up with, it's a community engagement plan. Is that what you're seeking? Because the second half of it, I think, was more sort of about explaining the information about what's happening. So, Councillor Smart, maybe just articulate what it is that you're hoping for as part of this.
Yeah, I do think Ms. Lachance has, explained it well. It's just about communicating as we go along, but I think also if there's any opportunities for this sort of like strategic decision making, I just think this is a really large topic that spans generations in a sense. Like it's like we're talking about, like this whole borrowing strategy and the impacts of it is decades of impact, and I think the community needs to be involved in how we strategize this. I don't.
So the direction is really then to ask, make sure there's a communication plan and a consultation plan as this is rolling forward. Is that?
Yes.
Okay.
I just can't stress enough about how I feel this could all go sideways if we don't both bring the community along and actually involve them in the decision making.
Thank you. So moved and second by Councillor Appleton. Any other discussion on that? Yep, Councillor Green and then Patterson.
Thank you. I don't disagree that we need community engagement around the financial aspects of the work we do, but I'll be very honest with you. It has to be very high level because I think most residents are concerned about tax rates and debt, but I think getting into the minutia of financial planning is probably not their strength, and I speak honestly about that because it's not my strength. So I really depend on our director and her staff to guide us through these processes. I'm not sure how a communication plan would look for this kind of discussion and around strategizing. I just don't think that's within the capacity of our community generally. I think it would be very complex and complicated. And I'm not saying we shouldn't do something, obviously, but I really think I would like to take guidance from our director and her staff on how best to communicate this work.
I do take the motion as that, leaving that to staff to give some of that direction and not to be too directive at this point. Councillor Patterson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I think there has already been a bit of a preliminary conversation on this with the public. It is called the financial plan. This was in the financial plan, and it's called an annual report. And so both of those do cover that. I see this as not so much public engagement to seek input, but on the IAP2 spectrum, it's to inform. We are borrowing this, and it is to go to core capital projects, which this is for, and it is to reduce the risk to the community, bring down the risk on those core assets. So for me, it's not a public engagement. It is on the IAP2. It's to inform. And council chose, although I didn't support it, chose to adopt a debt policy that did not have qualifiers and to not set thresholds for reserve funds. Those are the important work elements that a council can do to communicate to the community what the magnitude of any of this will be. But council chose not to do that. So I am having some difficulty in understanding why we are now wanting to backtrack to have an engagement with the public on these issues without being able to look at those broader objectives and limiters of what this council or a future council will do and how that will impact the community, because I think that's the bigger question.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. I'm going to speak very briefly in favor of the motion. I think it's left very general at this point. I do believe it is really more of an inform than a consult, but I do recognize there is a visceral reaction to debt. I have it. Many people have it. That people wonder why you have money, why you're spending that first. Understanding the rationale for it, understanding the limits and what the upper bounds of that might be, and what that brings in terms of risk mitigation as well as additional risk. There are those aspects of it. I think if we don't start thinking about communicating this now, when we're just starting the process, we are at risk of having it come to a major head. And if those other pieces that you're concerned about, Councillor Patterson, form part of that, then that can come through it as well, right? I think that's part of the process. So I am supportive of the motion as it stands in front of us. I think it will help us, with the communication with the public. So as long as it's not too prescriptive at this point, we're just leaving it to be developed. Okay, I'm going to call the question then. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Thank you, Councillor Smart. Anything else? Anybody? Okay, we have 1 minute and 15 seconds left. We have one item on the agenda, and the person who spoke to it has been waiting patiently online to see where we're at with this. Any new business? Okay, any notices of motion? Okay, so we have correspondence from other levels of government. Okay, let's just extend this for 5 minutes so we're not doing the person who's been here for an hour.
I'll extend the meeting till 11 o'clock.
Yeah, that's all we need. Thank you. Moved and seconded. Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? Not opposed. So we have the correspondence. We had the representative speak. We have the letter from the mayor asking us if we are interested in matching their donation to what is obviously a worthy cause, which we have several. So first order of business, I think we do need to receive the correspondence from another level of government. It's a moved and second. All those in favor? Any opposed? Not opposed. I will allow for a bit of a discussion here. There's probably not a motion on the table unless there's someone who wishes to make a motion.
Make a motion, Your Worship.
Go ahead.
So I would move that the district match the $5,000 contribution as per Langford's correspondence for the Forge Trades Focused Mental Health Center.
I'll second that.
And further to that, Your Worship, unless staff has a more appropriate avenue, I would say that be drawn from unallocated surplus.
So I'm just gonna go for staff to ask that question. So Ms. LaChance, we're lucky to have you in the room. If the will of council is to support this, what are the options for funding that? And is unallocated surplus one of those?
Oh, yes, thank you, Your Worship. Through you. The funding sources, yes, one of those sources could be the unappropriated or unallocated surplus. There's also unallocated or reserved amount for the grants and aid still remaining for the 2025 year. That's $6,300 still available to council. And then, of course, there's the future grant and aid process. That would be an option.
Those three. I might suggest, given I don't anticipate, we may have other asks for the grant process towards the end of the year, so one of those two is probably the appropriate one. You made as part of the motion that it included from the unallocated surplus, or is that just a suggestion?
I understood that probably staff would want direction on the source of the funds, Your Worship, and I did consider the unallocated amount in the grant and aid, but recognizing that this is a slightly different ask in terms of an investment in a regional resource, and also that there may be upcoming requests for the grant and aid, the unallocated grant monies for specific community Oak Bay oriented projects. So I see this as slightly different, and that's why I made that suggestion.
Okay, thank you. So it's moved and seconded. Any other discussion on this? Okay, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate this. I think that I agree with the allocation of its location. I don't think this really qualifies under a grant and aid model. So, and this is a sort of a one-time funding piece to help get this up and running off the street, and obviously an important aspect. I think if we can help a neighbor in need occasionally, that's a good thing to do. So, I'm happy to call the question on this. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. That carries. Mr. Perot, you stuck around? Yeah.
If anyone has an extra hammer, you're welcome to be doing demos next week.
Sure. I don't know after those stats if I want to help anymore. Perfect. Yes, that's right. Positive mental health. Thank you very much. With that, I think we are ready for a motion to adjourn. Move seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Thank you to staff for a very long night, for sticking around for all that.